In this world that worships divine beasts, the other clans all have handsome and holy guardian divine beasts, but the most powerful Ducal clan in the empire chose to summon a newborn black dragon. It turns out that not long ago, the Moonlight Ducal clan, for some reason, angered the guardian beast. Due to the beast's departure, the Duke actively abdicated and confined himself in a solitary tower. His youngest son inherited the title, becoming the youngest Duke in the empire. The loss of the divine beast caused the Moonlight clan's prestige to decline. Many nobles believed the Moonlight family was no longer worthy of standing alongside the other three great ducal clans. The emperor, knowing the Moonlight clan's difficult situation, suggested that the Duke summon a powerful ancient creature to replace the divine beast. With the emperor's permission, Edenbach immediately invited the royal mage to set up a summoning magic circle. To wash away the clan's humiliation, he secretly made a firm resolution that no matter what kind of powerful monster it was, he would have to subdue it and turn it into the clan's divine beast. When the magic circle was officially activated, the knights simultaneously drew their swords ready for battle. But along with a flash of holy light, an ugly little black dragon fell with a thump into the middle of the magic circle. In an instant, everyone was stunned. Was the ferocious ancient creature of legend actually a newborn black dragon who hadn't been around for long? At this moment, the baby dragon Asen also completely didn't understand what was happening. Clearly, just a moment ago, she was taking a nap with her mother in the forest. Thinking she hadn't woken up yet, the little girl rubbed her eyes. Then she grabbed her tail and gave it a hard bite. But no matter what she did, the scene before her eyes did not change. Seeing those humans pointing bows and arrows at her, Asen was so frightened that tears couldn't help but flow from the corners of her eyes. Because since she was little, adults had always taught her that humans are devils who would devour beast people. Just when Asen didn't know what to do, she suddenly remembered what her mother had said. Her mother once said that Asen would definitely be summoned by the male protagonist of this world. After that, she would become cannon fodder and have a tragic ending. At that time, her mother told her the way to avoid that fate was to help the male protagonist improve his relationship with his father. Afterward, the male protagonist would propose to Asen, but because she has beast person blood, she must absolutely not agree. She must properly hand over the male protagonist to the female protagonist. However, at that time, Asen was only focused on sleeping. The only thing the little girl remembered was that there was a human boy who wanted to be her husband. Asen immediately shouted, "Husband!" toward Edenbach, but the opponent still drew his sword and pointed it at her. The language barrier made Asen feel mistreated and burst into tears again. Seeing this, the knights all felt a bit reluctant to see her suffer. At this point, Asen remembered her kindergarten teacher once taught that if you meet a human, waving a white handkerchief means there is no intention to attack. So Asen took off the white silk scarf from her neck and used her tiny claws to wave it vigorously. "I surrender. I surrender." To her surprise, Edenbach thought it was some kind of cursed item. He hastily instructed the knights not to lower their guard. Just like that, everyone watched Asen wave the scarf for a few minutes. A knight finally spoke up tentatively, asking if this might be the sign of a white flag of surrender. Looking at its tiny size, it is definitely just a hatchling. By now, Asen was so tired she could no longer wave the silk scarf. Right then, Edenbach used his sword to pass over a handkerchief. "I understand your meaning. Don't cry anymore." Asen took the handkerchief and blew her nose, thinking to herself that perhaps her husband didn't really intend to eat her. Edenbach turned his head and asked the royal mage to cast a translation spell. Hearing Asen's words, Edenbach's heart immediately melted. He didn't expect this dangerous ancient creature to be so pitiful that she was begging him not to eat her. After that, Edenbach brought Asen back to the Duke's mansion. When the vassals buzzed with discussion, claiming this dragon was too weak and suggesting they ask the imperial family to summon another ancient creature, Edenbach immediately refused. "We have already spent a lot on this summoning. The clan no longer has surplus assets. As for how to handle the resummoning specifically, it's not too late to decide after seeing its abilities." Thus, Asen was taken to the Divine Beast Room by Edenbach. This room was magnificently decorated, a residence specially built by the Ducal clan for the noble divine beast. Then Edenbach introduced himself and drew a clear line, demanding that Asen stop calling him husband. Hearing the other party state his name, Asen also carefully spoke her own name. As soon as the words were out, Edenbach impatiently asked about her abilities. Was it possessing powerful magic that could destroy the Duke's mansion in a single blow? Or was it a miracle of God that could heal wounds and predict the future? Asen shook her head in constant denial. After thinking for a moment, she told Edenbach that she was very good at climbing trees and swimming very fast. Seeing Edenbach start to restlessly rub his hair, Asen hurriedly added, "Not only that, Asen sings very well too. I don't taste good, so please don't eat me, husband." Looking at the little dragon in front of him, with tears still in the corners of her eyes and still worrying about being eaten, Edenbach truly didn't have the heart to scold her. He thought to himself that since this was already a failed summoning, it couldn't get any worse than this anyway. Just then, a servant brought in a portion of food. This was prepared by Edenbach because he worried the monster would become ferocious if hungry, but now, even if it were violent, it wouldn't matter. Upon opening it, Asen's eyes widened in shock. In the middle of the food tray was a trembling little rabbit. Seeing Asen not moving for a long time, Edenbach thought the little girl found the rabbit too small and asked if she needed to change to a bigger one. But this action made Asen realize that humans were indeed very dangerous. She jumped off the table and ran frantically toward the door. As a result, the little girl struggled for a long time but still couldn't push the large door open. The servants were all melted by this cute action. Seeing this, Edenbach was speechless and asked what kind of act she was putting on. Seeing him step by step approaching her in a critical situation, Asen spat out a burning hot dragon breath from her mouth. The large door was immediately blown wide open. Edenbach couldn't believe it and wondered what Asen had actually done. But at this moment, Asen felt terrified and trembled, thinking she had caused trouble by breaking the door and would be eaten by the human later. Afterward, Edenbach ordered workers to repair the door. During the construction time, Asen was arranged to stay in another room. Once the danger passed, Asen breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, both she and the little rabbit were safe and sound. She thought surely her powerful dragon breath had suppressed the opponent. But the mana nearby was too weak. Asen was a baby dragon, so she couldn't yet cast magic to return home. To hold out until her mother came to get her, Asen began rummaging through her personal storage space. It was a survival manual for when meeting humans. The book said, "When meeting humans, absolutely do not engage in disputes with them. You must quickly run away and report to an adult beast person. Because humans are a cowardly race that bullies the weak and fears the strong. But if humans intentionally attack, absolutely do not back down. Do not let them look down on the children of beast people." Reading up to here, Asen angrily ran to the mirror. She put on what she thought was her fiercest face, preparing to use it to intimidate humans. That day, Asen was sleeping with the little rabbit when suddenly someone entered the room. One of the two was Edenbach's assistant. The other looked somewhat like Edenbach. The moment he saw Asen, the other's eyes were full of contempt. "Is this the divine beast the Duke summoned behind my back?" Thinking it was Edenbach's father, Asen immediately called out, "Father-in-law, me and the little rabbit next to me don't taste good. Even if you eat us, it won't be enough to be full, sir." The man heard this with a confused expression. "I don't have a daughter-in-law like you." Right at this moment, Edenbach heard the news and rushed over. The man turned to ask him what was going on. "This little thing wants to be your stepmother. What do you think?" But hearing that, Asen immediately broke into a cold sweat. To her surprise, the man before her was Edenbach's grandfather. She remembered her mother repeatedly warning her that the male lead's grandfather, Elkai, was the person Asen had to be most wary of. When he was young, he destroyed many wyverns and achieved great feats for the Empire. Therefore, in principle, he also hated Asen, who had the appearance of a wyvern. Furthermore, he suffered from a strange illness, and his temperament was becoming increasingly sensitive. While Asen was wondering why Elkai wasn't sick as her mother had said, the other party also asked about Asen's abilities. After hearing the little girl talk about her ability to sing, climb trees, and swim, Elkai's face was full of contempt for Edenbach. "Don't tell me you intend to consider it a divine beast?" Seeing herself being looked down upon, Asen was unhappy. Edenbach explained that the little girl had the ability to breathe fire, and that she had directly destroyed the door he couldn't hold back. Although Elkai didn't believe this little booger had such power, he still decided to observe for a while longer. Being looked down upon time and time again, Asen stomped her feet in anger. This was a very insulting remark in the eyes of a beast person who worshipped strength. But her anger was ignored by the other party. Remembering the story, a fairy tale about a baby dragon turning into a king and forcing humans to surrender, Asen decided she must teach this arrogant grandfather a lesson. Over the next few days, Asen and the little rabbit secretly planned to kidnap the grandfather. They began gathering information within the mansion. During that time, hearing someone else also use the word booger to call her, Asen was so angry she wanted to run over and give the grandfather a beating. Fortunately, the little rabbit stopped her in time. Afterward, Asen recorded all the information she heard in a small notebook. But right when the little girl was about to execute the plan, the notebook suddenly disappeared. Asen lay flat on the ground crying sadly. In another development, the assistant presented a notebook to Edenbach, explaining that he picked it up while cleaning. Though he didn't understand what it was, Edenbach immediately realized whose work this was. Discovering there were even drawings of the garden, Edenbach instinctively smiled. It seemed Asen had adapted quite well to the mansion during this time. In the evening at the Duke's mansion, the rain poured down along with thunder and lightning. Edenbach went to Asen's room to check the situation. On one hand, he worried she would be affected by the thunder, and on the other, his grandfather invited him to dine together. Initially, Asen was very depressed because she lost her notebook. But when she heard there was her favorite strawberry dish, the little girl immediately regained her spirits. Looking at the dining table full of strawberries and sweets, Asen was so happy she almost fainted. At this time, Elkai still didn't forget to mock Asen. Sure enough, no matter how you look at it, it looks like an ordinary booger. Asen was driven mad with rage. Asen is not a booger! She looked dissatisfied. How could he say such words at the dinner table? Afterward, Elkai turned to ask for Edenbach's opinion. Knowing his grandfather had lost patience with the selection of the divine beast, Edenbach could only patiently explain, "It needs a bit more time, sir," seeing Asen eating happily. Elkai also tacitly agreed with Edenbach's decision. Suddenly, Edenbach suggested taking a walk with his grandfather tomorrow. Calculating that winter was coming, they should take the opportunity to look at the scenery in the garden one last time before then. But Elkai refused. "You don't need to take up your work time for me. Go get enough sleep." Hearing that, Asen came up with a good idea. Since she knew her grandfather would be taking a walk tomorrow, then she would just directly ambush him in the garden and find an opportunity to kidnap him. The next day, Elkai and the secretary took a walk in the garden. All along the way, Elkai talked only about Asen. Not just how the sight of her puffing her cheeks while eating strawberries was very interesting, but also that the little girl's personality was very lively and cheerful. "Even my grandson always calls me by my name, but that little girl calls me grandfather." Speaking to this point, Elkai instinctively burst out laughing. The secretary thought to himself that clearly there were plenty of complaints before, but in a flash, he had given the little girl this much pampered affection. Could it be that Elkai, who spent half his life on the battlefield and did not get along with his children, was actually just an old man who couldn't resist cuteness? Suddenly, Elkai's expression changed. He switched the subject and told Beyond to drop everything and return immediately. In the matter of summoning the divine beast, he still cannot distinguish clearly between the primary and the secondary, which makes me dissatisfied. Then, the next second, Asen jumped out from the bushes. She demanded that her grandfather go with her for a moment. Why? Once you go, you'll know what's happening. The secretary was startled, not expecting this little lizard to be so rude, but Elkai didn't mind at all. He turned to tell the secretary not to disturb him later, and then watched. Asen grabbed his pant leg and swaggered away. In another development, Bian, who received his father's summons, was gnashing his teeth. He didn't understand why the clan summoned a weak divine beast and didn't kill it. On the contrary, what was the point of calling him back? Clearly, he was up to his neck in work accumulating social connections. The follower explained that perhaps the clan truly intended to tame the divine beast because it was rumored its fire could pierce through the orichalcum door. Before the follower could finish, Bian cried out, "Impossible! The orichalcum door cannot be moved even by bombs!" It's likely that after losing the divine beast, the room's management was neglected. A baby dragon causing trouble in the mansion is only natural. The follower hastily flattered him. "The position of Duke should have been inherited by Lord Bian instead, sir." Speaking of this, Bian became even angrier. Clearly, his older brother had no advantage over him other than appearance and work ability. He had waited so long for his brother to abdicate, thinking it was finally his turn. Who would have thought the title would fall into the hands of a child? The more Bian thought, the angrier he got. Jealousy made him lose his ability to think. He asked the follower if that divine beast looked a lot like a wyvern. All his life, father has hunted wyverns. He is probably lurking, looking for a chance to slay that divine beast. Suddenly, he thought of a good idea. He would take advantage of the fact that Asen hadn't been chosen as the divine beast yet and kill her. With that, he ordered the follower to bring the battle bear he raised back to the mansion. Before arriving, I will pretend the battle bear escaped its cage. Use the chaos to kill Asen. Grandfather needs to know the Duke's mansion no longer has money to summon a divine beast. As long as Asen dies, Edenbach's title of Duke will also end. On the other side, Asen had tied Elkai up with a rope. She was secretly rejoicing in her heart. Next, she just needed to show Grandfather her scary side. As a result, in the very next second, the opponent easily removed the bindings without wasting any strength. Seeing this, Asen had to call the little rabbit for help. The two tiny creatures tried their best to tie Elkai up from the beginning, but while Asen was busy. Elkai carefully stroked her scales. The soft and comfortable feeling made him unconsciously imagine the scene of the little girl lying on his head singing. With these stubby legs, he wondered if she could play ball. I heard she's very good at climbing trees. While walking, she can conveniently pick some fruit for me. Elkai was immersed in happiness and accidentally stroked Asen's head. At this moment, Asen also finished preparing and began to let out wah-wah, roars of a ferocious dragon. But in the next second, the maid brought out strawberry cakes. This immediately caused the image of the ferocious dragon that Asen had painstakingly prepared to completely collapse. Asen held a bowl of strawberries and placed it in front of her grandfather. The teacher said good food must be offered to elders first. As a result, Elkai ate the entire bowl of strawberries. Asen wandered through the mansion in disappointment, regretting that she didn't get to eat the strawberries. And at the same time, she failed to show her ferocious side. Walking to a hidden corner, she suddenly overheard a conversation between the maids. They were very worried that Lord Beyond's bear would cause trouble again. Hearing their tone full of worry and fear, Asen suddenly had a great idea. As long as she defeated the bear, she would become a much more terrifying creature. Not long after, Beyond's battle bear arrived at the Duke's mansion. Edenbach specifically warned Asen to be extremely careful. After all, the battle bear has a violent temperament and almost injured someone last time. With that, he also invited the Knight Dalen to be a guardian for Asen. Asen greeted him, thinking that having a witness would be a good thing for her. When the time comes, this person could help her spread the news about her defeating the battle bear. At this point, Asen noticed the knight's expression was unnatural. It turns out that Dylan had been bitten by a lizard since he was young, leaving a psychological trauma. This time, he was worried about being kicked out of the Duke's mansion, so he reluctantly accepted the commission. Dylan tried to suppress his fear. He told Asen that he would be near the martial arts training ground. If she needed anything, just call him. However, in Asen's head, she only thought about befriending the other party. After all, except for Edenbach and her grandfather, she was not yet familiar with other humans. So the little girl took it upon herself to follow Dylan to the training ground. This made Dylan feel extremely uncomfortable, as if he were the one being watched. Seeing Dylan chopping wood for practice, Asen followed suit. According to her experience making friends in kindergarten, if you want to become close, you must do everything together. However, looking at the wooden stakes being destroyed one by one, Dylan only felt his heart go cold. Why is she so strong? Soon, the training ground became a wreck. His colleagues mocked Dylan one by one for taking on this mess. Then they handed him a cat teaser wand. To everyone's surprise, Asen really liked that toy. So in the afternoon, he stayed in the room playing with Asen, completely unaware that his fear of lizards was gradually fading. As for Asen, she believed her relationship with Dylan had become much closer. She immediately took out a gold coin from her storage space, giving it to Dylan as a friendship gift, thinking that the other party would definitely be willing to testify for her. Asen hurriedly told Dylan to come with her to a certain place. Smelling the scent of the battle bear nearby, Dylan used the excuse of danger to stop the little girl. However, in the very next second, an enraged battle bear charged straight toward them. Dylan just drew his sword, preparing to engage. But in just an instant, the bear's claws were right in front of him. In the critical moment, Asen stood in front, bravely delivering a direct strike with great force against the battle bear. The bear let out a miserable cry of pain, then was sent flying far away by Asen's brute strength. The powerful impact even pierced through the wall surrounding the Duke's mansion. Having finished it all, Asen triumphantly gave the bear an extra kick. "Take that!" Not long after, Edenbach, Elkai, and the others heard the noise and rushed over. They found out Asen had defeated Beyond's battle bear. Everyone found it a bit hard to believe, which I could believe. As a guardian, Dylan's actions this time were clearly a case of negligence, but he still braved the risk of punishment to testify for Asen. Hearing that, Elkai ordered his men to investigate the reason why the battle bear escaped its cage. At this moment, Asen raised her hand and said she knew who the culprit was. It turns out that before these people arrived, Asen had talked to the battle bear and learned the whole story. It had been driven here by someone using a whip to beat it. Then, based on the bear's account, Asen described that person's appearance. After hearing it, Elkai immediately knew it was Beyond's close secretary. He asked Asen to confirm the source of information to protect the battle bear. Asen lied. "I witnessed it all with my own eyes." Hearing this, the anger that Elkai had accumulated for so long finally erupted. He immediately ordered Beyond to come see him at once if he didn't want to be expelled from the clan. With that, he told Dylan and Asen to follow him for a moment. There are still many details of the case that need to be clarified. Seeing grandfather was angry, Asen thought she had done something wrong and hurriedly followed. She completely failed to notice that the white silk scarf tied around her neck had fallen to the ground. Edenbach picked it up. He remembered that this seemed to be something Asen cherished deeply and kept with her since the first day they met. But looking at it now, it appeared old and a bit dirty. That night, Bjorn rushed to the Duke's mansion and was given a severe scolding. Even though he insisted he knew absolutely nothing about this matter, it still did not appease Elkai's anger. He was also required to hand over all divine beasts to Edenbach within 3 days. His ambition to control the Duke's mansion was shattered just like that. Bien gnashed his teeth in rage and cursed his subordinate. The subordinate also felt very wronged because to ensure safety, he had even given the battle bear a berserk potion. No matter how strong the knight named Dylan was, he shouldn't have been a match for the battle bear. However, at this point, Bjorn had been pushed into a corner. He called for the wife of his close aide. She begged Bjorn to save her husband. Bjorn agreed, but on the condition that she must complete the mission he assigned. During lunch in 2 days, I will dine with my father. At that time, you just need to pour this vial of poison into my father's wine. Pushed to the limit, the woman helplessly agreed. On the other side, Asen searched all over the room, but couldn't find the handkerchief. She couldn't hold back her tears out of self-pity. It was a gift handmade by her mother. The fabric still held her mother's scent. Right at this moment, a knock sounded at the door. The one who came was Edenbach. Noticing the corners of Asen's eyes were red, he hesitated for a moment and then said softly, "If you're tired, I'll come tomorrow." Asen said it was fine. Since she couldn't sleep anyway, it was better to talk to her husband for a bit. She hugged her pillow to calm down. Then she heard Edenbach's question. "You could breathe fire to pierce the orichalcum door, and you could also defeat a powerful battle bear. Why did you intentionally pretend to be weak during the summoning? With this strength, you could have completely defeated me and the knights." Asen was startled. Could it be that humans are actually such weak creatures? But the teacher said humans are very dangerous. Maybe this is the tactic to make her let her guard down. So Asen intentionally put on a fierce dragon look. You're right. At that time, Asen intentionally went easy on you guys. Hearing that, Edenbach seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. He returned the silk scarf he had picked up to Asen. Since he saw it was old and a bit dirty, he also specifically found a similar silk scarf to give to Asen. Asen was very happy to receive a gift from her husband and immediately tied it around her neck. Looking into those clear purple pupils, Edenbach made a firm resolution. Even if he regretted it later, it wouldn't matter, because the fluttering heart at this moment told him the answer. He knelt on one knee before Asen. As the head of the Moonlight family, I sincerely plead with Asen to take on the role of the clan's guardian divine beast. Innocent Asen completely didn't understand what he was saying. Thinking that a serious explanation was too difficult for this baby dragon to understand, Edenbach said to her again, "It means you will be the master of a human clan." Hearing that, Asen happily agreed, thinking to herself that this way, humans wouldn't dare to look down on her anymore. Edenbach breathed a sigh of relief. He promised that he would grant whatever Asen wanted. However, what Edenbach didn't expect was that Asen's wish was to marry him. Both of Edenbach's cheeks instantly turned red because of those words. "Do you like me?" Little Asen looked up with eyes full of innocence. Asen doesn't like her husband? He suddenly froze. What? Edenbach knelt down gently. So, why did you say that? The little girl flashed a bright smile. Mother said that the boy who summoned Asen is Asen's husband. Although she still didn't understand why her mother told her to call a human husband, her mother was never wrong, so there must be a reason. Furthermore, in the beast person world, marriage is when two beast people get along and live together. That's the reason why Asen has as many as 5 fathers. A sense of confusion rose in his eyes. So what your mother said means you are also in a situation where you have to accept a contract marriage? His mother had passed away when he was born. If he had a kind mother, then perhaps his father wouldn't have lost his divine beast, and the clan wouldn't have declined to this extent. He once thought no one could love someone who had let their family ruin like him. So he used to believe that. Accepting the political proposal of the third princess was the only way to save the clan. But in truth, he also once wanted to have a marriage for love like his parents had. Edenbach lowered his face slightly, his voice containing a sense of gloom. Is my fate still a political marriage? But a political marriage is still a marriage. After convincing himself, he finally spoke. All right, let's get married. Hearing that, the little girl was slightly stunned, but that didn't mean Asen didn't like her husband. His pupils dilated as he looked intently at Asen. What? The little girl's face was slightly embarrassed as she spoke in a carefree voice. Of all the humans Asen knows, Asen likes her husband the most. Hearing that, Edenbach was momentarily curious. How many people do you know? Hearing this, the little girl held out her small hand and counted. B, 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 B. Then Asen gently raised both of her tiny hands and said, "It seems to be 10. The little girl's adorable action made him burst out laughing. What? That number is too small. That laughter spread to Asen, making the little girl laugh along. A smile appeared on Edenbach's handsome face. All right, I'm still not clear on what your true intention is, but fine, we'll get married if that's what you want. Anyway, being ranked first out of 10 people is something to be proud of. It's still quite impressive, isn't it? By now, Asen was so sleepy her eyes were narrowing, but she still tried to speak. Marriage is like that. Edenbach didn't intend to disturb her anymore. His long, slender hands were placed gently on Asen's head, stroking it. It's late. I'm going back. Before leaving, he didn't forget to look inside. Good night, divine beast of moonlight. A well-behaved little girl lay neatly on the bed, her small hand raised and waving. The next day, in the dining room, the figure of a woman was sneakily doing something. Her eyes looked toward Bian, and then she made a firm resolution. The series of her actions were all captured by Bian's eyes. All preparations were complete. How long have I waited for this moment? He curled his lips in a contemptuous smile. Right then, a voice rang out. Lord Elkai is entering. Ben escaped from his train of thought, his face startled as he looked at the person in front of him. Wait, what is father carrying there? Elkai walked in with a calm expression. In his hands was Asen, lying snugly. This is the creature just summoned. I thought it best to let you get acquainted with the little girl sooner. His face gradually changed. I see. Very pleased to meet you, little lizard. Bian's eyes didn't leave the object in Elkai's hands. He cursed inwardly. Damn it, why bring that lizard along? Father, his eyes were full of discomfort. He heard that the old man always kept it with him, but seeing it with his own eyes was truly an eyesore. He couldn't stand it. He had to make the old man drink the wine as soon as possible. At this moment, Asena's eyes opened wide, demanding strawberries. Hearing that, Elkai could only laugh pamperingly. There will be many other dishes you'll like more than strawberries, so wait a bit. But his eyes glanced toward Bian. So, have you thought about handing over the divine beast to Edenbach? Hearing that, his shoulders trembled slightly. Bian forced a smile. Of course I must hand them over. Those are father's words, so I must obey. Elkai suddenly became suspicious of his submissiveness. What's the matter that you're listening to me today? Bian tried to maintain a smile on his lips and spoke. I have never gone against father's wishes. I am just indulging you a bit for the sake of the big picture. Recently, I have reflected a lot on this matter. He reached out to introduce each type of wine he had brought. With that sentiment, I have brought a rare wine that is hard to find in the entire empire. Then, holding the bottle in his hand, he offered to pour it for him. Our father and son haven't drank together in a long time. Why don't we have a glass? Just as he was about to succeed, Elkai quickly covered the mouth of the glass with his hand, refusing because there was a child present. Do you intend to drink wine in front of a child? Look at her. The eggshell on her head isn't even dry yet. Bian ignored those words and insisted on offering the wine to Elkai. But this is a meal that father and son haven't had together in ages. Father should drink a little. He flatly refused. I said no means no. His face darkened. Elkai's word had always been absolute, even when he appointed the young Edenbach as duke. He couldn't argue back then, but now he was protecting a strange monster like this? Bian couldn't take it anymore. Today was the day he would eliminate him and reclaim the position that belonged to him from Edenbach's hands. Bian began playing the emotional card. Even so, out of respect for the repentance I'm showing, please accept just one glass. He shut his eyes and exhaled a bored breath. It seemed he really knew how to reflect. Perhaps he wasn't completely stupid. Elkai pushed the wine glass toward Bian. Then, just a little. Hearing that, he was elated. But when the wine was poured, Asen smelled a strange scent from the glass and immediately spoke to stop him. Grandfather, don't drink. Elkai picked up the wine glass, thinking Asen didn't know what it was, so he explained. It's not strange. People call it wine. When you grow up, you'll know what it tastes like. With that, he brought the wine glass to his mouth. Seeing his plan about to succeed, Bian couldn't help but reveal a wicked smile. That's right, drink it. After draining the glass, Elkai suddenly realized something. That's strange. This wine is so bitter. The tip of my tongue is burning and numb. What is it made of? Before he could finish, he coughed violently and red syrup spilled out. Asen beside him couldn't help but panic and call out loudly, but he knew nothing more. He slumped onto the table, gradually losing consciousness. Later, Elkai lay on the hospital bed being examined by a doctor. Afterward, the doctor stood up, took off his stethoscope, and let out a long sigh. You need to prepare yourselves. Eden Bach's expression immediately changed. What do you mean? The doctor turned his gaze to the person lying on the bed. It seems he has consumed a poison called angel's tears. It's named that because just one drop makes people see angels without feeling pain. But because the mortality rate is so high, there really is no antidote. Bien, standing nearby, feigned distress. Say something that makes sense. How can there be a poison in the world without an antidote? Then he collapsed beside Elkai, his voice turning hoarse. Oh no, father, if only I had been the one to drink it first. But no one saw the anger clearly shown on Bian's face. If he had disposed of that medicine bottle sooner, they wouldn't have known what kind of poison it was. If it weren't for that lizard, I would have poured the whole bottle of poison into father's mouth and finished him off. As for Eden Bach, after freezing for a moment, he asked tremblingly, Is there really no way to detoxify it, even if it's just a small possibility? Any method will do. The doctor spoke hesitantly. Actually, there is one way to detoxify it, but... Bian's eyes flashed with disbelief. There's a way? Eden Bach heard this and quickly asked, What is it? According to ancient documents, priests born on the birthday of a god are said to receive special holy power. It is said they can save those near death with just a gesture. It seems all saints in history were such cases. However, people with such power are said to appear only once every century. Hearing this, Bian jumped up, his voice becoming more urgent. Then the possibility of such a person existing is very slim. Eden Bach stood still, his voice becoming cold. No. I believe it has been a century since the last saint passed away, so there is a possibility that a saint meeting the condition still exists. The doctor slightly agreed with his opinion. That's true, but it's only a possibility. Bian continued to obstruct. That's right. If such a person existed, the temple would have announced it loudly. Instead, wouldn't it be better to focus on catching the culprit? Ignoring his words, Eden Bach sought another method from the doctor. Is there no other antidote? After hearing the doctor say it was the only way, Eden Bach immediately stood firmly before everyone and ordered, at all costs, find a priest born on the god's birthday. Bian's face turned pale. He repeatedly blocked all of Eden Bach's ideas. No, we should prioritize catching the culprit first. He turned around to look at Bian, his eyes showing determination. No, finding the saint is the priority. Bian left in anger. You insolent brat, your era is about to end, just wait. Asen, beside him, had eyes full of worry. Hearing the little girl's voice, Bian took a step back and shouted, What? When did this little lizard get here? Asen spoke back. I am not a little lizard, I am Asen. He kicked her squarely. Get lost! Asen let out a soft cry. Bian! The little girl sat on the carpet, following Bian's every step. It hurts so much. Why is he angry with Asen? Then Asen glanced inside the room. Eden Bach's grieving figure sat guarding the bedside. Seeing the master of Moonlight like that made Asen sad too. We have to save grandfather. But how can we save him? Asen was curled up in her cradle when she suddenly woke up. She suddenly remembered the contents of a book her mother used to tell her about. To save grandfather, they needed to find a human called the female lead. The little girl put her hand to her chin, deducing an apprentice priestess. Pink hair, approximately the same age as the male lead, right? Is her birthday the same as the god's birthday? But the book said she heals everyone, so she must definitely be the saint. After packing her things, Asen climbed down from the cradle and said goodbye to her rabbit friend. Then she hurriedly ran off. But after just a few steps, she stopped. But where does the female lead live? How do I get out of the castle? Should I ask my husband for help? Tears suddenly appeared in her sparkling eyes. No. If that human called the female lead can't heal grandfather, he'll look so disappointed. What should I do? Just then, a call rang out. Lady Asen. Yes, Delan stepped closer to Asen. What are you doing here? The little girl stared at him. That's right, this human knight is here. Asen called out sweetly, "Human knight!" Dylan seemed wary of her excitement. "Yes?" "Big brother," Asen quickly got to the main point. "Do you know where the priests live?" He looked at the little girl cautiously. "Unless there is a special occasion, most of them stay in the temple. But why do you—" Asen quickly ran off, not forgetting to order Dylan. "You need to come with Asen." He was bewildered by the little girl's order. "Huh? Where to?" But Asen became annoyed, and her voice grew more urgent. "Just follow me, and you'll see." In the cool and peaceful autumn air, the steady clatter of carriage wheels rang out on the road. Inside the carriage were Asen and Dylan leaving the castle. Dylan's face still held a hint of bewilderment and confusion. He turned to ask Asen again about this strange mission. "So you're saying we need to find the leader of the apprentice priests? And a girl roughly the same age as our duke?" Asen nodded seriously in response. "That's right, exactly." He sighed helplessly, said nothing more, and worried secretly in his heart. Last time she turned the training ground into a mess and even fought with a battle bear. I wonder what trouble she'll cause this time. Elan tried to ask again, "May I ask why you are looking for that apprentice priest?" Asen, with a face full of righteousness, munched on a strawberry and said seriously, "It's a secret." Hearing this, Dylan forced a smile. He felt so uneasy. Seeing that he couldn't pry Asen's mouth open, Dylan quickly changed the subject. "I don't know why you want to take the apprentice priest away, but it's best not to reveal your identity to them." Hearing this, Asen stopped and asked, "Why?" "Because if a divine beast appears in person and asks to take an apprentice priest away, you'll have to explain a lot of things. That way, the chances of everything going according to plan will decrease." Hearing that, Asen immediately agreed. Before she could think of what to do next, the carriage suddenly stopped. "It seems we've arrived, Lady Asen." Inside that mansion, a high-ranking priest was reviewing stacks of documents. He grumbled angrily, "How can there be absolutely no source of income like this? I thought I'd receive a generous bribe since most apprentice priests are children of nobility, sent to the temple to be raised, right? But those under my care are all orphans from the slums." The priest gnashed his teeth, clutching the list tightly, thinking to himself, "Fortunately, that pervert came yesterday and paid a small amount to take a girl away." Just then, there was a knock at the door, and an assistant entered to report, "Sir, priest, you have guests." The priest asked with a sullen face, "What guests? Is someone causing trouble?" The assistant replied gently, "No, sir. They say they want to take Selena away." The priest thought to himself, "Selena? Isn't that the insolent brat who doesn't know her place? Since I couldn't stand the sight of her, I tried to sell her to that perverted noble yesterday." Then he looked up at the assistant and asked, "Who wants to take the child away?" "They said they are from the Moonlight Ducal clan." Those words made the priest's eyes light up. "If it were Moonlight, you should have informed me sooner." Then he ran quickly to welcome the guests, his face clearly showing greed. No matter how far they had fallen, a ducal clan was still a ducal clan. Money was waving at him. In the guest room, the priest switched to a welcoming tone to receive Dylan and Asen. "Thank you for traveling such a long way. I heard you are looking for Selena. Exactly how do you know about our Selena?" Dylan made up a story on the spot. It was when the Duke visited this place. The way the little girl played happily with Bibi, he said he was very impressed. The priest glanced over at Asen, smiled, and asked back, "Ah, so that child is named Bibi?" "Indeed, Selena is an extremely gentle and kind child. However, it's a great pity. Someone came before you and wants to adopt her already. Would you like to choose another child?" But Asen, munching a strawberry while sitting nearby, signaled, "Absolutely no other human." Dylan then calmly confirmed with the priest, "That's right, it must be Selena." The priest flashed a ghoulish smile as if he had just caught another prey. He pretended to be in a difficult position. "Since both want that child, what should I do?" Dylan narrowed his eyes and asked, "Is there no other way?" Seeing Dylan had fallen into the trap, the priest's greed began to surface. "As the knight knows, our temple always puts the child's happiness first. Do you know where that happiness comes from?" The priest now gradually revealed his true nature. He rubbed his two fingers together, signaling for money in an obvious way. "It's from money. With money, children can wear beautiful clothes and can eat delicious dishes." Hearing this, Dylan thought uncomfortably to himself, "I've heard rumors and guessed some of it, but do they really trade children for money? Meaning in the end, they will hand the child to the higher bidder. I wonder if I have any backup funds left." Dylan suppressed the pain and placed his remaining money on the table. The priest picked up the pouch, fished out a small coin, and made a blunt statement. Oh dear, this is not enough for the child to be happy. Dylan tried to persuade, I will bring more later. The priest waved his hand imperiously. Happiness cannot be bought with debt. Then he pretended to reach into his pocket. I wonder how much the person yesterday brought along. Just when Dylan thought the negotiation had failed, Austin suddenly took out a glittering gold coin and threw it toward the table. Dylan couldn't believe his eyes. Don't tell me it's that toy. Seeing so much gold, the priest's eyes shone brightly. He said excitedly, Indeed, you are very smart, worthy of being the Duke's pet. Is this for me, Lord BB? Austin nodded decisively, indicating yes. The priest was now beyond excited. He flashed a gleeful smile, gathering all the gold on the table. Thank you, this is surely enough for Selena to be happy, haha. Then he turned and ordered the assistant from before. Quickly, bring Selena out here. Meanwhile, Dylan couldn't help but exclaim, Is there something wrong with his eyesight? He didn't even look closely at that thing. At this moment, Austin suddenly tugged Dylan's sleeve. I did well, right? Dylan glanced at the little girl helplessly. At the same time, outside, there was the sound of a girl shouting loudly, Let go! Let go of me! Right now! I already said I'm not going, you bastards! Immediately after, the door to the room gradually opened. Austin intently watched the person about to enter. The little girl remembered the words she was once told. Austin, the female lead is a child with beautiful pink hair and golden eyes, a child like an angel. Selena entered the guest room. Her appearance was exactly what Austin expected. But the angel was scowling and cursing loudly. Damn it, go to hell, you sick nobles. But surprisingly, Selena was a transmigrator. She used to live as an ordinary office worker in a country called Korea. But on her way home after work, while reading a romance fantasy novel, she was hit by a truck. When she opened her eyes, she had entered the role of the female lead of the novel she was reading. With 15 years of experience reading romance fantasy novels and having read hundreds of works, it didn't surprise her much. After all, in this genre, entering a tragic character's role then changing their fate is almost a rule of the game. This character, although sold to a perverted noble as a child and suffering for a short time, completely changed her destiny after meeting the male lead, so she had prepared her mind. Thinking that one day that perverted noble would come for her, but not right now, surely. The assistant gripped Selena's arm tightly and pulled her inside. The priest pretended to be kind and said, Selena, quickly, say hello. Selena pursed her lips and hesitated, thinking, the timing is too strange. Could there be another transmigrator besides me? Then Selena cast her eyes over Dylan, thinking to herself, furthermore, just by looking at him, that person doesn't look like a pervert at all. Suddenly, Selena's eyes widened when she looked toward Austin. All her focus shifted to Austin. She thought in surprise, that's... Afterward, the three of them climbed onto the carriage together to return to the castle. In the carriage, the atmosphere was frozen. Austin and Selena sat facing each other, staring intently. Selena observed Austin from head to toe, a round face as dark as a bun, big pink eyes like marbles. A body covered in black scales, with a few pieces of unbroken eggshell remaining on her head. After observing closely, Selena thought to herself, that is definitely the baby dragon Austin, the divine beast the male lead summoned in the original story. But under Selena's scrutinizing gaze, Austin sat still without saying a word, which made Selena even more confused and curious. But why is she here? In the story, right after being summoned, she breathed fire and killed the knights for hurting the male lead. She should have been locked in the watchtower. Yet that creature was now standing in front of her. So Selena immediately concluded, she is definitely a transmigrator. Or a regressor or a reincarnated person. Either way, she is living a second life to change her tragic fate. Usually, when two transmigrators appear in the same story, the original female lead transmigrator would often go crazy wondering why things aren't going the original way. In the end, it backfires and leads to ruin. And now that person is me. While lost in these deductions, Austin spoke up, pulling Selena back to reality. Austin is... Selena held her breath and listened intently. The master of Moonlight. After hearing that, Selena swallowed hard, thinking, what? Is she declaring her dominance? Like, I am the boss, so don't even think about taking the lead role? Selena encouraged herself not to be afraid and then stammered in response. So, where are you taking me? Austin calmly replied, Asen is also a fierce dragon. Selena looked down, her hands clutching her dress even tighter, thinking, I already know you burned several knights to a crisp. I have to choose. Should I fight fiercely to reclaim the female lead position from this girl? Or should I hide the fact that I'm a transmigrator and just try to survive here? Selena hesitated for a long time, but before she could speak, Asen interrupted. Asen will obediently hand over her husband. Before coming here, the little girl remembered her mother saying, since Asen belongs to a different race, please hand him over to the human female lead. Then Asen held out her tiny hand towards Selena to show her sincerity. It's a promise, Selena. Seeing the little dragon's attitude, Selena used her past novel experience to analyze the situation. This kid seems to be choosing the path of running away. But isn't this type of story everywhere? After taking care of the tragic male lead to survive, she runs away and then the male lead goes crazy and chases after her. It's a very familiar trope. It seems she intends to use me as a shield. Thinking this, Selena waved her hand in refusal. It's okay. You don't need to hand him over. Asen heard this and was bewildered, not understanding a thing. Selena continued her deduction. Anyway, this whole world will revolve around her. There's no need to create a useless competition. Otherwise, my life might be in danger. So, from this moment, I officially give up the role of female lead. By now, everyone had returned and was in grandfather's room. The treating doctor stared at Selena. An apprentice priestess? But an apprentice priestess cannot use holy power. Hearing this, Edenbach couldn't help but worry. The reason the doctor said that was because he believed that if anyone could use holy power, they would have been promoted straight to an intermediate priest. Especially if she were born on the birthday of a god, she should have been raised to become a saintess already. But Selena didn't care about the doctor's words. She directly rolled up her sleeves. She rushed toward grandfather's bedside and said, I can use it, so please step aside. Selena stood before grandfather's bed thinking, if I make a mistake here, I'll die under that creature's claws in my second life. I will summon all the hidden power that has been suppressed for so long. Let's go, Selena. And then, a burst of radiant golden holy power exploded from Selena's hands. The blinding light made the doctor exclaim in shock, Holy power? Impossible. While Edenbach's face was full of hope, silently praying. Even Asen's eyes widened, and she cheered inwardly, Barkley. Selena gradually became exhausted, dripping with sweat. She thought helplessly. The poison is too strong. If only I could have lived a few more years, my holy power would surely have been enough to purify it completely. With the current situation, I don't have enough strength. This poison is too cruel. I don't think I can purify it all in just one day. Selena gnashed her teeth, using all her remaining strength, and then a miracle happened. Grandfather's eyes slowly opened. Everyone in the room felt an outburst of joy. All eyes were fixed on Duke Elkai. He slowly opened his eyes and asked dreamily, Am I dead? The doctor, who was sad before, was now joyful and elated. No, sir, you are still alive. Lady Asen brought back a priestess born exactly on the birthday of a god. After hearing that, Elkai stroked Asen's head and smiled gently. I never thought the day would come when I'd be indebted to a lizard. I'm glad to see you're still safe. Receiving praise, Asen was extremely proud and spoke excitedly. Asen is always strong. Then Duke Elkai looked at Edenbach and said, You are to become the future duke of this family, yet you're crying? Edenbach quickly wiped his tears and answered with a trembling voice, I'm sorry. Finally, Elkai's gaze stopped on Selena, the one who had saved his life. So, this child is the one who saved me. Selena's face was currently drenched in sweat. Dylan stepped forward and replied, Yes, that's right. That is the priestess Lady Asen brought back. Elkai said to Selena with a voice full of gratitude, You must have gone through much hardship for me. I will grant you a worthy reward. At this moment, the doctor spoke, breaking the current atmosphere. Pardon me, but there is still poison in Lord Elkai's body. Hearing that, Asen and Edenbach were startled. The doctor continued, Treatment must continue until recovery. Priestess, if it's not too sudden, could you stay here and continue the treatment? Hearing the suggestion, Selena's inner thoughts exploded. Why is this happening again? If I become a saintess, I'll marry the male lead just like in the original story and might even be killed by Asen. So, at all costs, I must avoid becoming a saintess. Selena turned to look at Duke Elkai. However, I have one request. Elkai asked softly, "What is it?" Selena took a deep breath and said, "Please don't tell anyone that I have divine power, and please let me be Lady Asen's maid." At Selena's strange request, the whole room fell silent. Asen was equally surprised. The doctor asked in confusion, "Wouldn't it be better if you became an official priestess?" Memories of being shunned in the past flooded Selena's mind. Her voice became cold as she replied, "No, I don't want to go back to that place anymore. I was always mocked for being an orphan from the slums." "But why of all choices do you want to be Asen's maid?" Selena immediately gave an extremely persuasive reason. "Lady Asen was the only one who recognized my value and came to find me personally. I want to serve her to repay even a small part of that kindness." Selena turned her sparkling eyes toward Asen and asked in an earnest voice, "Lady Asen, will you accept me?" Asen was bewildered and speechless. By this time, night had gradually fallen and everything seemed settled. Edenbach saw the doctor and Selena out of grandfather's room. "Thank you everyone for working hard until late at night." The doctor bowed his head slightly and replied, "We only did what was necessary, sir. I will have the maids prepare a room for Lady Selena. The two of you should get some rest." Selena only nodded gently in agreement. In Asen's head, she was still confused. Mother said the female lead is a human I must be careful of. So why does she want to become Asen's maid? Knowing the little girl was still confused, Edenbach gently comforted her. "Take your time thinking about letting that priestess be your maid. There are many other ways to reward her, so if you don't want to, it's okay to refuse. Asen will think more about it. But husband, have you found the person who did that to grandfather yet?" Edenbach's expression darkened. "Not for sure yet. In your eyes, I must be useless, right? You brought that priestess back, while I achieved nothing." Asen recalled what the knight had said in the carriage. "The person they suspect is the culprit has disappeared. I heard they were last seen at a stable on the edge of the castle." Then Asen used her tiny hands to shake Edenbach's pant leg. "Husband, you did very well." Edenbach looked down at Asen, who was trying to comfort him. "Bian took everyone hunting without permission, which is why you had to suffer like this." Hearing Asen say that, Edenbach was a bit surprised. Asen had a face full of pride. "Asen knows everything, but Asen didn't hear it from the human knight. She would definitely keep the secret for the knight because he said it was a secret." Hearing this, Edenbach sighed as if understanding the issue. "It seems Dylan told this little one everything. I must tell him to watch his mouth." "Yes!" Asen said one last word and quickly made her escape. "Anyway, husband, please cheer up. Asen is going now." Edenbach reached out to call her back, but Asen had already run away. He stood still, thinking, "She must be tired. I didn't even get a chance to say thank you for saving grandfather." But Asen had now returned to her room, planning her next move. Grandfather has been saved. Now it's time to punish the one who hurt him. Her eyes burned with rage. Asen began to analyze the valuable information she had gathered. He said the suspect disappeared from a stable on the outskirts of the castle. Then the little girl reached out to open the window. A cold wind blew into the window, making Asen shiver. "I heard snow has started falling there. Asen hates the cold very much." Thinking of this, Asen let out an "ah" and used her tiny hands to open her personal space. Asen reached inside for a moment, then pulled out a blue cloak and happily put it on, immediately turning into a cute little lamb. "With the cloak mother made for me, I'll be fine even in a blizzard." After wrapping an extra scarf for her sleeping rabbit friend, Asen pulled the rabbit along, running like the wind. If she left right now, she would probably make it back before dark. The scene shifted to the mountains where a blizzard was occurring. Suddenly, there was the sound of shoes stomping on the snow. "I wonder where that person went." Then a hand gently picked up something buried under the snow. It turned out a man with blonde hair was there. Wearing a long leather coat and holding a fox in his arms, he whispered, "It's very cold, let's go inside. The others are coming soon." On this side, Asen and the rabbit were crossing through the blizzard. Finally, Asen and the rabbit reached the cold, deserted mountain peak. Appearing before them both was a rather old wooden house. Covered in white snow, Asen thought to herself, "Is that the pet tower? I heard there was a tower like that nearby. No wonder this place feels so creepy." Looking at the old window shaking in the wind and about to come loose, Asen reassured herself, "It won't be haunted, right?" But instinctively, the little girl immediately pushed the rabbit forward and said, "Rabbit friend, you go first, I will protect you." Knowing it was being used as a guinea pig, the rabbit resisted helplessly. Asen continued to encourage it. "Hurry up, rabbit." The rabbit resisted with all its might. While Asen was trying to use her bottom to push the white rabbit into the house, her mouth constantly encouraging, "It's okay because I'll be right behind you." With that, Asen pushed the rabbit with all her strength, making it tumble forward. Seeing that, Asen felt extremely guilty. She hurriedly helped it up and said, "Sorry." At this moment, the silhouette of an orange animal flashed before Asen and the white rabbit, causing both of them to hug each other tightly and scream in terror. They only saw that it was a beautiful fox with smooth orange fur standing on a pile of straw. It stared at them both and complained, "You guys are too noisy." Only then did Asen breathe a sigh of relief. Then the little girl waved her hand and said in a friendly voice, "Hello, Mr. Fox. Sorry for making so much noise." The fox glanced at Asen. It gave a humph, didn't bother to answer, and turned its face away. "But may I ask you something?" Right at this moment, a familiar scent wafted out. It was picked up by Asen's sensitive nose. "He smells like my husband, but not like grandfather, and not like Bien either." But the scent wasn't the important matter now. Asen hurriedly ran after it, calling out, "Fox! Fox! Do you live here? Or is it just a coincidence?" The fox maintained a cold expression and didn't bother to pay attention. Seeing this, Asen ran up to block his way and asked further, "Fox, have you seen any woman around here?" The little girl waved her hands and feet, describing her just like the picture Dylan had shown. "Like this, she looks like this." Seeing Asen's terrible description, the fox narrowed his eyes and mocked, "You ugly thing." Her wounded pride made Asen shout out, I'm not ugly, okay?" The fox asked indifferently, "Why are you looking for that woman?" While running after the fox, Asen shouted, "Because she hurt my grandfather." Asen intended to meet her and scold her. Hearing the little girl say that, the fox immediately stopped. "So you're that rumored divine beast, you ugly little lizard?" Asen's pride was offended once again. She bristled and said, "Asen is not ugly, and I am not a lizard either." But the fox didn't care. He walked out of the warehouse, then turned his head to look at Asen and said, "If you're looking for that woman, then what are you waiting for?" Asen's eyes lit up when she saw the fox agree to help. She followed him immediately. "Let's go together, Mr. Fox." The three of them crossed the white snowy forest. But Asen smelled a strangely familiar scent and thought, "This place smells even more like my husband. Does he come here often?" After walking for a while, the fox suddenly stopped in front of a tent. Inside the tent was the woman Asen was looking for. She was lying motionless. The fox glanced at Asen. "If you can, take her away." A moment later, Asen had bundled the woman inside the cloak and was using a rope to pull her along. Seeing that tiny Asen could pull a grown adult, the fox was inwardly terrified. What kind of creature is that? As for Asen, as she dragged her through the sleet, she thought, "I have to quickly show her to my husband and grandfather. Then they will praise me for being a brave and courageous dragon, won't they?" Asen sang happily as she pulled. "Asen is very brave, la la la. Asen is very courageous, la la la." At this time, two people in white cloaks were also nearby. They were the two assassins sent to eliminate that woman. They were going crazy because they had lost track of her. One of the assassins stepped on a dry branch and said angrily, "Where did she disappear to?" The other also grumbled, "That's why I said you should have handled it properly from the start." Suddenly, the one who was just grumbling started glancing and signaling, "Wait, look over there. Isn't that the missing woman? Is that lizard-like thing carrying her?" By now, Asen was exhausted and so hungry she had no strength left. Just then, the two assassins appeared in front of Asen. One of them snapped a dry branch in his hand and threatened loudly, "It looks like we can't let you leave peacefully." Seeing the two assassins, the little girl trembled with fear. Seeing Asen's pitiful appearance, one of the assassins said with a mocking face, "Look at how scared you are, little lizard." The other added, "Stealing is very bad, kid." Asen smelled a familiar scent on the two assassins and was startled. He smells exactly like Bian. The assassin slowly drew his sword, his voice threatening, "Hand over that woman obediently and we'll let you go without pain." But Asen narrowed her eyes with a righteous attitude and declared loudly, "No! Asen will fight the bad people." The assassin laughed mockingly. "You've got guts, but what are you going to do to stop us?" Asen took a deep breath, her tiny hands using all her internal power to curl into fists. A flow of pink magic gathered into the shape of a heart. Asen shouted, "Asen is a..." But then she only let out a tiny puff. No flames came out at all. "Oh, this is bad." Asen was too hungry to breathe fire. The assassin couldn't wait any longer and said contemptuously, "I was going to let you die with less pain in one strike, but you dare to mock me? You insolent thing." With that, His voice full of rage, he swung his sword to finish Asen. The little girl was helpless and could only cower, covering her head with her hands. Her eyes tightly shut, she thought, "Save Asen." Immediately after, several thumping sounds rang out. When the little girl opened her eyes, she saw the two assassins lying neatly on the white snow. In front of Asen was a tall man in a long black cloak, holding a sword in his hand. Asen was extremely curious. Who saved Asen? That appearance, along with the familiar scent, made Asen suspicious. Could it be? The man turned back to look at her. His cold purple eyes were exactly like Edenbach's, making Asen even more certain. He spoke coldly. "You idiot! Don't tell anyone you saw me." In the middle of the freezing snowy forest, two assassins lay defeated on the ground. Asen, the small dragon standing nearby watching, suddenly realized something and widened her eyes, staring intently at the blonde man. "There he is," she thought in amazement. "The face is identical and the scent is just like my husband's. But he looks even younger than grandfather." Without a doubt, Asen widened her sparkling pink eyes and called out with a tremble, "Father? Oh, where did he disappear to?" But before her was only a snowy forest, and the blonde man was nowhere to be seen. The little dragon then looked up at the tower atop the distant snowy mountain and wondered. He was clearly imprisoned in that tower, so how did he escape? Scene changes to a dirt road covered in autumn leaves. 4 men were on horseback beside a carriage. The man dressed in green turned cheerfully to the man beside him and said, "Today's hunt was the best. Lord Bianti." He immediately corrected himself. I suppose I should call you Duke now, shouldn't I?" Another man continued to flatter him. "The clan's discipline has finally been restored. It was so exhausting working under that young Duke. Only now can I breathe a sigh of relief." Biante, though not yet inaugurated, was wearing a purple coat with a leopard fur collar. He merely smirked, glanced at the subordinates praising him, and said, "You all have suffered much." Then he thought bitterly, "If only I had dealt with my father a little sooner. I don't know why I was so worried all this time. Tisk, tisk, I must be too kind. It's certainly my weakness." Then he made a suggestion. "The weather is so beautiful today. Why don't we all have a drink?" Hearing this, the subordinates immediately chimed in. The man in green said excitedly, "Ha ha ha, it's an honor, Lord Duke. I would be happy to accept any wine you grant us." Duke Bianti rode ahead toward his magnificent mansion, secretly feeling contempt in his heart. What bunch of flatterers. As they neared the mansion, he saw a crowd standing before the gate. He gasped in shock. What the hell? Oh, is that my nephew? Why are you standing here waiting for me?" Then Frederick raised his head high and declared coldly, "Beyond Moonriff, for the crime of conspiring to poison Lord Elke, I shall reclaim Moonriff Castle and punish you severely." Hearing this, Bianti, still on his horse, smirked with utter disdain and replied, "How ridiculous! Poisoning? Me? My own father? Is there any child in this world who would want to kill their father?" Frederick retorted coldly. "Indeed, I never thought a traitor like you would ever wear those clothes." The man smirked provocatively and said, "You must say something reasonable for me to bother responding. It seems you've lost your mind since your father passed away. My patience has its limits." But Frederick remained terrifyingly calm. He looked straight into the man's eyes and delivered a fatal blow. "Lord Elkai is still alive." Upon hearing that, Bianti froze, standing stunned with his mouth agape in shock. Then a subordinate nearby leaned in and whispered, "They say the poison in Lord Elkai's body was neutralized early this morning, and they also captured the poisoner in the forest." Hearing this, he screamed in disbelief. What? Frederick maintained his cold expression, silently calculating in his head, "The knights haven't arrived yet, but they will surely capture that woman." He looked straight at his uncle and set a condition. "Therefore, if you surrender now, I will spare your life." Hearing this, the man gnashed his teeth, lost in thought. He glanced at the confused subordinates behind him and thought in a panic, "We cannot retreat in this situation. If they find out now that I attempted to murder my father, I won't just be executed. I'll lose this duke title as well. There's no turning back." Bianti suddenly looked straight at Frederick and screamed hysterically, What are you all doing? Frederick claims he will kill me by taking advantage of my father, who is gravely ill." "It is a tragedy that my father fell ill, but there are things one should do and things one should not. How can someone who dares to threaten his own uncle just to consolidate power be worthy of leading this clan? Now, everyone, draw your swords. Let us welcome the glorious birth of the new Duke of Moonriff. Thus he decided to rebel. All eyes turned toward Frederick. But he just stood there coldly, raised his sword, and delivered the final judgment. From this moment on, these people are considered traitors. Kill them all immediately. The loyal knights rushed into the rebel crowd. The clanging of weapons rang out ear-piercingly. The metallic clashing of weapons sounded incessantly. Beyonce gnashed his teeth, suppressing his rising anger. He thought in confusion, "Damn it, we have the numbers, but we're being completely pushed back. If this continues, there's only death." He shouted toward the gate, "Release all the divine beasts." Earth-shattering thuds echoed as the heavy iron gates were pulled up and a giant dark shadow lunged out. It was a massive eagle, spreading its powerful wings and shrieking as it dived down, followed by a hunting leopard rushing forward at lightning speed. Witnessing this scene, Frederick's face turned pale, and he thought in alarm. He even brought out the divine beasts. Then he hurriedly shouted to boost the soldiers' morale, "Do not retreat! Counterattack!" But it was too late. A set of sharp claws struck with a shank, blocking a sword. At that moment, Knight Dylan was struggling and sweating. He used both hands to support his sword, bracing himself to block the jaws of a growling giant lion. His muscles trembled violently. Dylan thought desperately, "If this keeps up, we will lose. Even if we win, we will suffer heavy losses." He gnashed his teeth, his whole body shaking from exhaustion. Then he suddenly remembered his savior. Lord Asen. With those tiny hands, she could send this damn lion flying with just one punch. At that moment, the lion let out a thunderous roar. Knight Dylan screamed in desperation, "Lady Asen!" Immediately, a blurry image appeared. A familiar cry rang out, "Bibi, iya!" And from behind Dylan, a tiny, cute, dark shadow appeared. It was the little dragon Asen flying in midair. The little dragon let out a shrill cry, "Bibi, jia!" Knight Dylan looked up in awe at the tiny creature that had just appeared. Before the giant lion could even react, the little dragon Asen lunged forward with terrifying speed and kicked it in the face, sending it flying into the air. Asen repeatedly kicked it in quick succession, making it spin like a whirlwind. Afterward, the little dragon Asen dealt with the other divine beasts. The hunting leopard and an eagle were all defeated in an instant. Then she puffed out her chest with pride and thought, "I've eaten a lot of wild berries along the way, so I'm full of energy. Who should I scold next?" Seeing that sight, Byanti's soldiers pointed and screamed in terror, It's a monster!" Chaos ensued as the soldiers turned and fled in panic through the forest. Screams echoed everywhere. "Aha! Help me!" Beyonce stood stunned, sweat pouring off him like rain. He stammered at the soldiers, "Where are you going? Quick, hurry up and fight!" Before he could finish his sentence, he started screaming frantically, "Ah!" When did that happen? It was the little dragon Asen, who had latched onto the head of his horse at some unknown point. In the midst of that, Frederick raised his sword high and roared, "Capture them! Do not let a single one escape!" And from then on, the flow of the battle changed in the blink of an eye. Byanti stood dazed as a clank sounded, and his sword fell clattering to the ground. He had completely lost his will to fight. Now Frederick's side had gained the upper hand. The soldiers who lost their fighting spirit were captured one by one. Byanti's subordinates were tied up and sat dejectedly on the ground. And finally, the live capture of Byanti, who had fought until the end. He knelt, tightly bound with ropes, with two cold, sharp spears at his neck. Frederick stood tall before his enemy. The little dragon Asen perched majestically right on top of his head. With a swift motion, he drew his sword, pointed it straight at the sky, and shouted loudly, "Rejoice! This is our victory!" Immediately, the cheers and shouts exploded like thunder. The little dragon Asen, perched on Frederick's head, was startled by the shouting and showed signs of fear. Seeing this, Frederick gently lifted Asen down from his head and asked softly, "Were you startled by the cheering?" Asen replied shyly, "Yes." Frederick smiled warmly to reassure the baby dragon. "It's okay, everyone is just happy. Thank you, Asen. This is all thanks to you." Hearing this, the baby dragon Asen felt embarrassed. She smiled so wide her eyes closed. So the two enjoyed a sweet moment. He rubbed his cheek against the baby dragon's soft fur. Asen also happily nuzzled her head against him and cried out joyfully, "Bibi, ya!" Then, The scene shifted to a dark and damp dungeon corridor, lit only by a few flickering torches. Dreary footsteps echoed, and spiderwebs covered a corner of the wall. A figure sat huddled on the cold floor. The prisoner was none other than Bianti. He sat clutching his knees, head in his hands, hair disheveled, gnashing his teeth and growling, "That damn lizard!" His thoughts were drowned in hatred. The matter with the divine beast, my father's right-hand man, and the poisoning of my father, even my final battle, everything was ruined because of that lizard. Instead of being wary of my father, I should have been on guard against that lizard. If I get out of here, I will definitely kill it. Tap, tap. The footsteps stopped right in front of the cell. El-Kai Moon Rif appeared, standing tall outside, observing coldly. He spoke, "Humph, I see no sign of repentance. Did I expect too much?" Immediately, Bianti suddenly seemed to go mad. He lunged at the bars and screamed, "It's all because of you, father. If you hadn't only protected Frederick," El-Kai asked calmly, "In contrast, what would I gain by only protecting Frederick?" Bianti laughed savagely, pouring out all his long-held resentment and screaming, "If my older brother did something and ruined the clan, then of course the position of the next head should have belonged to me. Why was a boy, a snot-nosed brat like that, chosen as the heir? Am I wrong?" El-Kai responded calmly, "Right before deciding the next head of the clan, do you remember the time I sent you and Frederick to the white snowy plains?" Bianti gnashed his teeth and replied, "Yes, I remember. You said whoever survived in that cold wasteland for a month would become the successor duke. I also remember very clearly that Frederick could not even walk on his own when he returned and had to be carried on someone else's back." Back to the reality, El-Kai stood outside the bars and asked coldly, "Do you know why the boy returned on someone else's back?" Bianti smirked and replied, "Because he couldn't control his own strength, I assume. What's crazier than making someone like that the duke?" El-Kai's eyes narrowed. He revealed a shocking truth. "I wanted to test the two of you, so I sent a knight disguised as a commoner who had wandered off from our territory." Hearing this, Bianti was startled and stood stunned. El-Kai continued in a low voice, "Not only did you coldly drive that person away just because he was a nuisance, but you also buried him in the snow so that the news wouldn't reach my ears, and you even checked it to see if he was dead. Meanwhile, Frederick was so foolish and generous that he even shared his own portions with others. As for you, you turned your back on that civilian just to save yourself. How could I let you sit in the position of the head of the family?" Hearing this, Bianti tremblingly justified himself. "If I had known it was a commoner from our territory, but I didn't abandon him that cruelly. Since that area is near the border, I thought he was a resident of another region." Right then, a loud thwack sounded. El-Kai struck his cane down hard, interrupting him. "Stop, that is enough. Considering the relationship between father and son, I will not take your life with my own hands." El-Kai pulled out a dagger. He thrust it straight toward Bianti's chest and delivered the final judgment. "End your own life." Hearing this, Bianti's whole body cringed. Sweat poured down his face as he stammered, "Wait, how can you do this to your own biological child?" But El-Kai had already coldly turned his back and walked away. The sound of footsteps faded into the dark corridor, leaving him screaming in despair, "Father, father!" After walking a distance, his footsteps stopped in the dark hallway. His eyes were fixed on a portrait of a fox hanging on the wall as he thought, "So it's still here. Perhaps I must order them to leave soon." Meanwhile, in the cell, Bianti let out a laugh. "Ha ha!" He gripped the dagger tightly in his hand. His laughter became increasingly wild, and then he screamed, "Ah ha 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 ha! To think I'm not worthy to be the head of the family for such a trivial reason. If only I had known, I should have eliminated you long ago." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps, tap, tap, echoed from the end of the hallway. The footsteps grew closer and closer. Bianti pressed his ear to the bars and thought, "Is it a guard? Perfect. I'll kill the guard as soon as he arrives and take the keys." But it was a figure in a cloak approaching slowly. Bianti quickly hid the dagger behind his back and wore a sinister smile, thinking, come here, a little closer." The dark shadow stood right in front of the cell door. Then it spoke, "Bianti." Hearing that voice, he stood there, stunned and confused, thinking, "Wait, this voice, brother?" The dark figure slowly pulled down his hood. A blond man with cold purple eyes appeared. He spoke, "Long time no see, my younger brother." When Bianti saw him, his face filled with panic, but he was still hiding the dagger behind his back and thinking in confusion, My brother? The one who lost all power and was imprisoned in the tower for making the divine beast rage? Why is he here? At this moment, the visitor did not say much. He drew a razor-sharp dagger from its sheath, stepped close to the bars, and muttered a deadly sentence. If I leave you alone like this, you will only become a source of trouble. Beyonce felt a thick, murderous intent. He tremblingly raised his hands and forced a smile, his face pale with terror as he pleaded, wait, brother? Listen to me for just a second. But he did not bother to reply and coldly pulled out the gleaming dagger. With eyes flashing a spark of death, thud, a fatal stab went straight into Beyonce's chest. The scene was submerged in the red of blood. Beyonce could not believe his eyes. He rasped, brother, why? Then his body collapsed, blood pouring out onto the cold stone floor. Afterward, the man coldly reached his hand through the bars, grabbed Beyonce's collar, and pulled the dying body closer to stage the scene as a suicide. Then, looking straight into the eyes of the defeated man, he bid farewell. My useless younger brother. Beyonce collapsed on his knees. He slumped his head, looking at the dagger still embedded deep in his chest. After finishing off his brother, the man turned to leave and thought to himself, I shouldn't have handed that woman over to Frederick. I should have dealt with her secretly. Suddenly, the little fox from the portrait that Elkai was looking at earlier appeared and rubbed its soft fur against his leg. He looked down and reached out to stroke the small animal, saying, You almost made everything unnecessarily complicated. Let's go to the capital, my son. I must go help the boy. Having finished his words, he turned to leave, his brown cloak fluttering. The loyal little fox ran at its master's heels. Meanwhile, in a luxurious tea room, the lights glowed, and macaron cakes and afternoon tea were exquisitely arranged on the table. A voice rose, beginning the gossip. Has everyone heard the news? The noble daughters immediately gathered around. One asked about the family of Duke Moonriff. Hasn't that family collapsed yet? A girl in a purple dress took a sip of tea and said disdainfully, I heard the young duke conspired with the royal family and summoned a monster. It seems he can't control it. Since he couldn't turn it into his divine beast? A girl in a green dress smirked. I knew this would happen as soon as he said he would summon a monster. Another in a red coat, appearing to know more, wagged her finger knowingly and interjected, Oh my, you girls are so slow with the news. A civil war broke out in Moonriff. Everyone gasped. What? Really? She continued. Yes, but the monster that Duke Moonriff summoned is said to have fought hundreds of knights alone and suppressed the rebellion. Hearing this, everyone was stunned and said, Oh my. Truly, if that monster is so strong, why didn't he turn it into his divine beast sooner? The girl in red began spinning conspiracy theories again. He's doing that intentionally to make Beyonce let his guard down. It can breathe fire without any magic tools or anything. It even smashed an orichalcum door with its bare hands. I heard it always carries a rabbit for an emergency lunch, and that is the new divine beast of the Moon Riff House. Hearing this, the group of noble daughters screamed, That is unacceptable. How dare he use such an unknown monster and appoint it as a divine beast? They all decided in unison. Let us send a formal petition to the royal family. We must protest so that it cannot be recognized as a divine beast. Meanwhile, at another location, a maid quietly recounted everything that had just happened. She reported that this was the mood of the nobility. It turned out they were just small fry. The one truly listening to the story was a blue-haired girl sitting leisurely on a sofa. She lifted a peculiar smile and said, Is Duke Moonriff's monster really that strong? Her eyes flashed with a sinister glint. She thought further. Strong enough to dare reject my marriage proposal? The scene revealed her to be the third princess, Locaslin Alioth. Suddenly, the scene shifted to another maid. She was trembling, bowing and crawling on the floor with a cup of tea on her back, stammering, Yes, that's right, princess. The poor maid thought, Oh, my leg has a cramp. Suddenly, the maid wobbled and tripped. She fell flat on the cold floor, causing the teacup to fall and shatter. Princess Locust stood there, looking down from above, and coldly delivered judgment without a trace of emotion. You can't even hold a single teacup for your master. For that crime, pay with your death. Immediately, she was seized by two tall guards by her armpits and dragged away. She was in utter panic, clasping her hands and begging, Please spare me, princess. Witnessing this, the other maids stood frozen like statues, their entire bodies shaking. The princess sat with her legs crossed on the sofa. She rested her chin on her hand thoughtfully and said, "Anyway, I want to see for myself just how strong that monster is." The silence was terrifying. The two remaining maids could only glance at each other, not understanding what was happening. The maid who had just reported broke into a cold sweat. She thought frantically, If I don't answer, I'll be sent to the execution ground for ignoring the princess's words." Then she hurriedly forced a smile and said, "Then how about this? Since your highness's birthday party is coming up, why don't you send him an invitation?" Hearing this, the princess's eyes lit up. She smiled with satisfaction. "Oh, that really is a wonderful idea." Hearing this, the maid breathed a sigh of relief. But suddenly, the princess pointed at her and said, "But must I give such a mediocre reason to summon that moon-riff monster? You shall also be executed." Hearing this, she was instantly terrified. Her eyes widened as she was immediately dragged outside, screaming, "I have committed a terrible crime. Please forgive me." At this moment, only one maid remained standing there. Tears began to well up in her eyes, but in stark contrast to that terrifying atmosphere, Princess Locust suddenly smiled radiously and looked down at the trembling maid. "Ha ha ha ha, why are you so afraid?" The maid, standing a distance away, stammered, I just... The princess interrupted, "Send a letter to Duke Moonriff. Invite the Duke and his divine beast to my upcoming birthday party. And don't forget to emphasize that even if the Duke doesn't come, the divine beast absolutely must attend." Afterward, the shocking news spread everywhere, leaving everyone stunned. A maid covered her mouth in horror and exclaimed, "What?" Even the soldiers turned around in shock and asked, "What did you just say? Her Highness, the third princess, sent a letter?" The news quickly reached Frederick's ears. He held a letter in his hand with an extremely serious expression. Later, in a sun-drenched garden, Lord Elkai was sitting opposite him. He slowly took a sip of tea and spoke. "As you know, Frederick, personally sending a letter in one's own name instead of through others carries a special meaning. Could it be that you are exchanging love letters with the third princess?" The little dragon Asen, sitting nearby, was also bewildered and didn't understand. Hearing the words love letters, Asen immediately broke into a cold sweat. She was in utter confusion, thinking, "Did my husband once have that kind of relationship with a human princess?" An image of the past flashed through Asen's mind, where Frederick happily held hands with a blue-haired girl, making her even more flustered. She immediately associated it with the image of her mother surrounded by countless beastmen and nodded to herself, thinking, "I see. My goal is to tame as many beastmen as Mother did, so my husband can do the same, right?" But Frederick immediately denied it. "No, I have never exchanged any love letters with her." Lord Elkai looked at the letter on the table and wondered, "Then why did the princess send an invitation to you?" Frederick offered a guess. "Perhaps it's because I rejected the offer of a political marriage." Hearing that, Lord Elkai immediately stood up. His eyes widened as he shouted, "What? A political marriage? The third princess proposed to you?" Contrary to Lord Elkai, Frederick calmly replied, "Yes, since she sent this letter, it seems she hasn't given up on her intention." Lord Elkai immediately fell into a state of panic. He stared intently at the letter and the pile of cookies on the table. Information about this princess appeared. The third princess, Locust. She is the most beautiful among all the princesses, but due to her hot temper, she is a princess who rarely receives party invitations. Out of everyone, she set her sights on Frederick. Frederick calmly lifted his teacup. He looked straight at his grandfather and said, "You don't need to worry. I already have someone I promised to marry." Hearing this, the little dragon Asen broke into a cold sweat, thinking, "How can he say something so ridiculous while keeping such a serious face?" Meanwhile, Lord Elkai was frozen, stammering, "Ma? Marry? To whom?" Frederick still maintained a calm face and answered, "We haven't drafted the contract yet. I will tell you after everything is in place." Lord Elkai was stunned, sweat pouring off him like rain. He glanced at Asen and then shouted, "A contract? Who on earth is that person? I will go meet them myself. Even you must admit that is absurd, right? A marriage contract? Marriage is already hard even when two people love each other." Frederick then looked over at the confused little dragon Asen. She stammered, Right, it's truly absurd. She is an extremely absurd person." But Frederick smiled to reassure her. It's not like that. I truly believe this is a good marriage. Both Lord Elkai and Asen were bewildered and did not understand. Lord Elkai began to speculate wildly, thinking, who on earth is that girl who makes my grandson have an expression like that? Could it be the apprentice nun he mentioned last time? Frederick returned to the main topic and said, however, I intend to go to the capital. I have to report on the civil war and announce the birth of the new divine beast, so I guess I will have to attend the princess's party. Hearing that, Asen suddenly raised her hand and declared firmly, that's right, but I'm not sure if this little one can deal with that hot-tempered princess or not. Asen wanted to meet the human princess. Both Frederick and Lord Elkai were taken aback. Frederick turned and asked again, you want to meet that third princess? Asen nodded decisively. Yes, that's right. She thought to herself that since that day, everyone had bowed to Asen, so if Asen mimicked that hot-tempered princess, Asen would become a truly fierce dragon. And everyone will have to acknowledge me. Hurry up, let's go, quickly. She began to imagine a majestic dragon breathing fire while Frederick held flowers, and Lord Elkai and the maid clapped in admiration. Seeing this, Frederick and Lord Elkai wondered why she was so excited. And then not long after, Asen, with sparkling eyes full of anticipation, let out a soft cry, bee, bee. They had arrived at the capital. They were in a bustling market with many people passing by. Asen was extremely excited, crying out loudly, bee-ya-ya! Frederick and Lord Elkai strode across the square while the little dragon flapped her wings alongside them, her eyes bright as she looked around. When they reached the crowded square, Asen was immediately attracted by the sparkling items. She cheered. The jewelry is so beautiful. The gems are so lovely, Frederick asked in surprise. Jewelry? Seeing the noble ladies passing by wearing lavish jewelry, Frederick looked at Asen with affectionate eyes. He thought to himself, from taming the divine beast to the civil war, there is almost nothing for which I am not indebted to you. My finances are tight, but if you want, I can buy you a shop in the capital. I want to give you everything I can. And just as Frederick was about to say something, Asen suddenly pointed at a woman passing by and shouted, it's exactly like the one husband gave me. Lord Elkai, walking beside her, leaned down and asked curiously, a gift? Asen proudly replied, yes. Ta-da! My husband gave it to me as a gift. Hearing that, Lord Elkai narrowed his eyes at Frederick and thought, a heat stone? When did the boy get that? Then he smiled, patted Asen's head, and said, anyway, since we're already out, let me buy you something. With that, Lord Elkai led the group to a large jewelry store. He said enthusiastically, let's go inside. Inside the shop, everything sparkled with luxurious light from countless gems and exquisite jewelry. Asen was immediately overwhelmed by a brilliant diamond necklace. She gasped and screamed inwardly, Bee-hee-ee-ah-ah! Seeing this, the shopkeeper smiled and said, oh my, the Duke's divine beast truly has a keen eye for beautiful jewelry. Please try some on. Asen was immediately adorned. There was a ring, a necklace, and even a bracelet. The little dragon was overjoyed, thinking, am I beautiful? Lord Elkai stood nearby, watching the scene and chuckling. It looks perfect for losing it. Meanwhile, in another corner, the pink-haired girl Selena, who was with them, was talking to the shopkeeper. She asked, don't you have anything smaller than this? The shopkeeper replied, we don't have any in stock right now, but we can have one custom made for you. Back to Asen. At this moment, the little dragon had curled her body and was rolling back and forth, laughing with delight amidst the sparkling jewelry on her body. Asen likes this. I feel so rich. Lord Elkai saw Asen lying amidst the treasures and sighed, saying, all right, if you lose it, I will buy you another one. Then he turned to Frederick and Selena, generously declaring, if there is anything else you two want, just say so. Hearing this, Selena thought to herself, rich people. Frederick immediately refused. No, Lord Elkai, I will pay for it. But he waved his hand and replied, it's fine. I owe her my life. You should at least do this, or perhaps I should just buy this whole shop for you. Just then, outside the shop, a man walking with a lady was laughing loudly. Ha ha ha. Then please convey my absolute loyalty to Duke Star Rabbit. The man was talking happily when he suddenly stopped. He narrowed his eyes as if seeing something unexpected, then approached Elkai's group with a social smile. I thought I saw a familiar knight standing outside, but it turns out it's Duke Moon Riff. It was the priest from the monastery where Selena used to stay. He turned and continued with a polite smile. Well, it's been a long time, hasn't it, Selena? Hearing her name, Selena, who was standing with Frederick's group, immediately turned around. She stood still without answering, only bowing her head in silence amidst a suffocating atmosphere where past and present suddenly collided. The air in the jewelry shop instantly froze. The greedy priest stood there with an elegant lady. He smirked and looked toward them, saying, "Ha, ha, Lord Duke." Then he glanced provocatively at Selena and Frederick, saying, "Perhaps you don't have the money to make our Selena happy." He pointed directly at the little dragon Asen, who was covered in jewelry on the counter, and continued, "But it seems you have money to spend on a beast." The little dragon Asen, who had been joyful, was now bewildered and didn't understand a thing. Frederick looked at him, gritted his teeth, and thought, judging by his collar, he seems to be a low-ranking priest. I don't understand where he gets the nerve to say such nonsensical things. The lady beside the priest also turned curiously and asked, "What do you mean, Priest Theodore?" The priest began his performance saying, "Didn't I suggest a little something to you before? That there was a family who took a child away arbitrarily without showing even the slightest minimum of courtesy?" These words were clearly aimed directly at Frederick and Selena. The Duchess asked in surprise, "Do you mean the family of Duke Moon Riff?" Hearing this, Lord Elkai could no longer restrain himself. He placed his hand on his sword, but Frederick stopped him and said, "Could you tell me the details of what happened, Duchess Starabit?" She signaled to the priest. "Please, Priest Theodore, go ahead." The priest, emboldened, leaned in and said, "You will be stunned to hear this. That knight standing outside said he needed someone to take care of the Duke's pet. And he requested Selena, the apprentice nun here. As you know, my lady, when the temple sends a child away, we thoroughly check the other party's capabilities." Selena, standing behind, was boiling with rage, thinking, "Unbelievable." The priest acted even more dramatically, saying, "Even if it was the Duke who requested it, we still couldn't bypass the temple's procedures, so we asked him to prove his assets. But that knight dared to bring out trash to mock me. Can you believe it? He gave me nothing but fake gold coins." He recalled the moment he held the gold coins Dylan gave him. They were coins engraved with Asen's animal image. Then the little dragon spoke up irritably. "Those are Asen's treasures. They aren't trash. I receive them every time the teachers at kindergarten praised me." Seeing Asen speak like that, the Duchess was stunned. She stared at the dragon in shock, thinking, language translation magic? The fact that it possesses translation magic, something only the royal family has, means it's a divine beast. The atmosphere in the shop instantly froze as a loud thud sounded. Lord Elkai's sword slammed hard onto the floor. Frederick, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. His voice was ice cold as he said, "It seems that is correct. A priest who is supposed to serve divine beasts dared to describe the treasures bestowed by the divine beast of the Moon Riff House as a pile of trash." Hearing this, Priest Theodore's face turned pale. Sweat poured off him like rain. He tremblingly glanced at the Duchess in utter terror, trying to explain that at that time, I only knew it was the Duke's pet. I didn't know it was a divine beast. Frederick questioned further. "So you think the things my pet gave you are a pile of trash? Or are you looking down on my divine beast just because it didn't inherit the bloodline of the previous divine beast?" He hurriedly waved his hands and shouted, "No, it's not like that. Priest Theodore was still trying to deny his guilt while the little dragon Asen said angrily, "If you weren't going to use them, then give them back to Asen." The priest finally confessed, bowing his head toward the dark floor and whispering, I threw them away." Hearing this, Asen was furious and screamed, "Pippi!" Selena, standing nearby, whispered to Frederick as she made a throat-slashing gesture, "Should we send him to God right now?" The priest, Theodore, heard that terrifying suggestion and lost his wits. He shouted, Wait, and immediately prostrated himself, begging, I will remake a bag exactly like the one I received and offer it to you." Frederick looked coldly at the priest kneeling on the ground. He asked, "What was in it?" The priest hurriedly listed toy gold coins, crumbled chess pieces, and a few strange pebbles. The little dragon Asen could only bow her head gloomily, thinking sadly, "Forget it. A remade one is no longer Asen's treasure." The priest, seeing the situation seemingly calm down, crawled over to grab Lord Elkai's leg. But Lord Elkai coldly kicked him away. He immediately turned and crawled toward Duchess Starabit, grabbing her hem and wailing, "Please help me, my lady, just this once, I beg of you." Duchess Starabit closed her eyes. She sighed in frustration, thinking, "How did I get involved with such a fool?" Afterward, Duchess Starabit had to speak up to mediate. She looked at Frederick's group and said, "It seems he has repented enough. Let's let everything end here." But Frederick did not agree so easily. He looked straight at the Duchess and questioned her coldly. "I wonder if you would say, 'Stop.' If the one insulted was the divine beast of the Starabit house?" Hearing that pointed question, the Duchess froze. She lowered her face, avoiding Frederick's gaze, and asked softly, "Are you still resentful about what happened before?" Frederick maintained his cold expression and replied, "Everything is in the past. How could I still hold it in my heart? I was just curious." Lord Elkai, standing nearby, hadn't understood anything. He turned to Frederick and asked in confusion, "What happened before? What is she talking about?" Frederick immediately brushed it off. He didn't want to bring up the past. "It's nothing. Let's continue shopping." The little dragon Asen was now fed up with the adults' bickering. She pressed her whole body against the glass of the jewelry display and let out bored papy sounds. The scene shifted to the magnificent Starabit mansion. Boom! Duchess Starabit kicked the door open in anger and entered. She screamed for her husband, "Hey you! That priest we met today! You must take responsibility and deal with him." The Duke, who was sitting on the sofa, looked surprised and confused. She was now boiling with rage, clutching her head and screaming, "Do you know what happened today? I was threatened because of that priest. It was none other than that Duke Moonriff acting all high and mighty just because he got a divine beast." Duke Starabit took a sip of wine and smirked with disdain, asking, "That mediocre family dared to threaten us?" She irritably recounted, "I was only mediating a quarrel, yet he brought up the incident from years ago." Hearing this, the Duke suddenly froze. He set his wineglass down and muttered, "You mean what happened when that young Duke had just inherited his title?" "That's right, that very thing. We used our divine beast to help the Duke destroy the desert monster, didn't we?" Duke Starabit began to recall the fiery past, a giant fire phoenix burning everything. She continued, "Things went a bit wrong then. I admit that half of the Moonriff Night Squad died in Bia's flames, but so what? They should be grateful I even saved the other half," the Duke said irritably. "What? He dares to complain because I sent the Fire Phoenix Divine Beast to the desert? We should have crushed them back then instead of just manipulating public opinion." The wife added fuel to the fire in agreement. "Yes, exactly, that is right. I took a look, and Duke Moonriff's divine beast is just a tiny lizard not even worth a glance. The story about it defeating Bianti's divine beast must be a lie. So, darling, use our divine beast to teach that lizard a lesson. And once again, just burn everything to the ground. On one side is a tiny baby dragon. On the other is a phoenix burning up the sky. Will this battle be dragon BBQ or roasted phoenix chicken?" A few days later, inside the magnificent Moonriff mansion, long sighs echoed. Knight Dylan stood scratching his head in frustration, while two other knights sat on the ground looking utterly dejected. Dylan lamented, "Phew, what should I do?" The moss-green-haired knight also said gloomily, "This is a major problem." The little dragon Asen, who was gnawing on a flower ring, looked at them in bewilderment and then flew over to perch on the railing. She tilted her head and asked, "Human Knight Dylan, what's wrong?" Dylan turned back with a worried face and said, "Well, you see, Duke, Jarabit has requested a friendly match between our knights." Asen was deeply shocked upon hearing this. She gasped and cried out, "How can that be? But if that's the case, can't you just fight them?" The little dragon Asen didn't understand. Dylan had to fold his arms, turn his face away, and confess the harsh truth. "The truth is, we are inferior to them in skill. If this continues, we will be defeated and bring great shame to the Duke and the young lady." Hearing that, Asen immediately puffed out her chest. Still wearing the flower ring on her hand, she declared confidently, "Then Asen will fight for you. Asen is super good at fighting. Look at this." With that, she flailed her limbs, mimicking a fight. Dylan looked at the little dragon and burst out laughing. "Ha ha, I really appreciate your sentiment, but for a divine beast to join a knightly friendly match?" The little dragon Asen drooped her tail gloomily and cried out, "Bibi." Seeing this, Dylan could only sigh. Suddenly, an idea flashed. The little dragon's eyes lit up and she cheered, "Asen has a great idea! Wait!" With that, she immediately turned and ran away. Dylan watched her go, bewildered and not understanding what was happening. A while later, the little dragon Asen was running at full speed. She slammed the door open and burst into a luxurious room. Lord Elkai, who was sitting there playing chess, was startled and confused. Then he scolded the dragon affectionately. "You little brat, where? Did you throw your dignity running here like your life depends on it?" Asen stepped in and looked curiously at a chess piece, thinking, "A toy? Do you play with toys too?" Then Lord Elkai, confused, picked Asen up. She hurriedly said, "Grandfather, you have to come with Asen. Let's go, let's go." Immediately, Lord Elkai, carrying Asen, appeared before the knight's training grounds. Dylan and the others were startled and bowed their heads. He stammered, "Lord Elkai, we are honored to receive you. For what matter is this?" He pointed to the little dragon and explained, "I've heard everything from this little girl on the way here. The fastest way to improve one's skills is through life and death battles. Therefore, starting now, help each other by fighting this divine creature with all your might, the divine beast of Moon Riff." The little dragon Asen acted cool and joined in, screaming, "Come at me! Attack!" The training scene immediately changed. Dylan and the other knights vigorously swung their wooden swords. Dylan shouted, Okay. We look forward to learning from you, Lady Asen." Meanwhile, a maid was hiding behind a wall, stealthily observing everything that was happening. Later, in a flower-filled garden inside the royal palace, Princess Loka sat there and burst out laughing. "Ah ha ha ha! A tiny lizard is training the Knights of Moonriff? Now I've seen it all. What is its personality like? Is it really as fierce as the rumors say?" It turned out that the maid at the Duke's mansion was a spy for this princess. The maid respectfully reported the information she had gathered. "It intentionally attacks the knight's weaknesses. It seems it shows no mercy at all." Hearing this, Princess Lokas rested her chin on her hand thoughtfully and said, "I wish I could see that for myself. It's a pity. It seems Duke Starabit is afraid of Duke Moonriff holding a friendly match with the divine beast, isn't he?" "Afraid? What do you mean, Your Highness?" "Exactly. If by any chance that lizard is too strong, then the title of the weakest family will change hands." Hearing that, the maid spoke up. "In fact, the Moonriff Knight Squad doesn't seem inferior to the other squads at all." Princess Lokas wore an implying smile. "So their strength has been underestimated? That makes sense. Until now, Beyonce has always spread bad rumors about them. This friendly match will certainly be very interesting. I will go see this match myself. So, contact both dukes and tell them they must bring their divine beast to the friendly match." Back at the Moon Riff Mansion a few days later, 2 days before the friendly match, the knights, led by Dylan, bowed 90 degrees before the little dragon Asen. They shouted in unison, "Thank you, Lady Asen, for helping us over the past few days." At this point, Dylan and the other knights, though their faces were bruised and covered in bandages, looked extremely energized. Dylan said, "Thank you for hitting us without a hint of mercy. This is a gift to show our gratitude." He held out a cardboard box full of children's toys, teddy bears, pinwheels, and bows and arrows. Seeing those toys, Asen's eyes immediately lit up. She was so excited that she immediately delivered a kick, snapping a nearby training post, and cried out, "Bee, iya, iya." The red-haired knight said happily, "Lady Asen likes it." Dylan also smiled with satisfaction despite his bruised face. "I'm glad. It seems she has recognized our effort a little. Lady Asen, we will continue to train hard." That night, the knights were still diligently practicing under the starry sky. After finishing her training, the little dragon Asen returned to her new, extremely luxurious and magnificent pink room that had been prepared by Frederick and Lord Elkai. Right now, she was relaxing, soaking in a cool bath with a cup of tea beside her. She looked no different from a queen. Then she let out a satisfied breath, "Bye," and looked out the window where the moon was perfectly round. She thought to herself, "The full moon is up. It has been quite a while since Asen came to the human world. Asen's birthday passed not too long ago, too." The little dragon suddenly jolted as a spark of realization flashed through her. Asen gasped in panic, realizing, Asen forgot that day was her birthday. Immediately, Asen decided to take action. She went to her white rabbit friend and called out, "Friend Rabbit, please hold a birthday party for Asen. And so, the little dragon organized the party herself. Asen proudly wore a folded napkin as a substitute for a hat. The only guest was her rabbit friend, and the cake she received was just a late-night snack. She couldn't even find any candles. And so, the little dragon Asen and the rabbit began to sing the song, Happy Birthday, Asen. Then she spoke to herself, to our beloved Asen, happy birthday. But suddenly, the little dragon lay flat with her face on the floor. She dejectedly declared, Asen doesn't want to play anymore. The white rabbit was startled and confused, letting out a squeak, squeak. By now, Asen's eyes were moist with tears. Feeling sorry for herself, she thought, it's not supposed to be like this. A birthday should be more fun than this. Asen recalled the scene of a proper birthday party with cake, candles, and many of her friends beside her to congratulate her. Asen then burst into loud sobs. Her tears flowed freely. She whimpered, thinking, Asen wants to see everyone again. Seeing this, the white rabbit stepped forward to comfort her. Right at that moment, there was a knock on the door. Frederick was standing outside, hesitantly saying, may I come in? At that moment, he was holding a blue gift box in his hands. Then he gave Asen the beautiful, elaborately decorated blue box and continued, Here, take this. The sobbing little dragon Asen asked in surprise, What is it? Frederick explained, A birthday gift. Asen was even more bewildered and replied, But Asen's birthday has passed. Frederick replied apologetically, Sorry I couldn't give it to you sooner. Hearing that, Asen immediately became happy again. She took the box and said, Thank you. As she opened the lid, her eyes instantly lit up. Seeing this, Frederick explained, It's a piece of neck jewelry. You can also attach it to the back of your scarf. Inside was a magnificent pink and black bow adorned with gemstones. Asen immediately wore it on the back of her wings. Then the little dragon turned around and cried out in delight, Ooh, husband, look, it flutters. Seeing this, Frederick smiled and asked, Do you like it? I love it. I heard you've been training the knights for the friendly match with Star Rabbit. That's my job, but thank you. But immediately after, Asen noticed Frederick's tired expression and asked, Husband, why do you have such dark circles under your eyes? Frederick explained that he was busy with reports on the Civil War. But I have finished the marriage contract. Take a look. And he handed Asen a piece of paper. The little dragon immediately took it. Asen, wearing her new bow, lay on the floor to read. The first clause stated, Frederick Edinburgh Moonriff will never have feelings for anyone else of the opposite sex. Second, Frederick Edinburgh Moonriff will fulfill all of Asen's wishes. And the final clause. Third, for the sake of the Moon Riff family lineage, Asen agrees to allow the adoption of an heir. Then Frederick knelt on one knee beside Asen. He explained, You might think the first and second points are obvious, but there are people who don't even keep the obvious things. I wrote them into the contract so you can feel at ease. Frederick hesitated, looking more embarrassed as he spoke of the third point. And regarding the third point, since I cannot have children, we will need an adopted heir to maintain my family lineage. I hope you will agree, even though you might not like it. Hearing this, Asen was completely confused. The little dragon asked in bewilderment, Why can't husband have children? She tried to search her limited knowledge and continued, In kindergarten, Asen learned that if two people hold hands while sleeping, it will bring a baby. Frederick, seeing that innocent look, hurriedly shook his head and explained, It's not like that. We are two different species, Asen. Hearing this, her two eyes were still wide open, not understanding a thing. Frederick felt helpless looking at Asen's pure and innocent state. He turned back to sign his name on the contract with a pen and said, Anyway, we will only adopt a child after I reach adulthood, so if you're not sure, just look over the first two clauses again. Asen looked at the contract, nodded, and then suddenly realized something. She turned to ask, Both points seem to be only good for Asen. Is there nothing that husband wants? Frederick smiled gently and replied, No, I only want one thing from you, that you will always stay by my side as my divine beast. Hearing this, the little dragon Asen was moved to tears. She hugged the contract and looked at Frederick, thinking to herself, Husband, Asen will return home eventually, but with the second clause, I can always talk about that later, right? Having decided, Asen dipped her finger in ink. She stamped the contract with her pretty little finger. Frederick took the contract with Asen's fingerprint and said happily, "You've stamped your fingerprint as well, so we officially have a covenant." Both sat opposite each other, each holding a copy of the contract. Frederick looked at Asen and gently explained further. "Since you are still young, we cannot get married right now, but as soon as you grow up, I will propose immediately. Oh, by the way, where you lived before, how did people celebrate birthdays?" By now, the little dragon Asen was very sleepy. She let out a big yawn and recounted dreamily. Everyone wears pretty party hats and sings a song. Then they blow out candles and eat cake. Frederick, seeing Asen start to doze off, said gently, "If you're sleepy, go ahead and sleep." Then he comforted Asen, who was lying on her soft new bed, smiling affectionately at Asen, who had fallen fast asleep with the white rabbit beside her. He whispered, "Good night, my partner." Time passed, and finally, the day of the friendly match arrived. At a massive arena, someone in the crowd muttered, "There are so many spectators. Duke Starabit is really being excessive, inviting so many people. Isn't that just to publicly humiliate the Moonriff family?" The person beside them replied, "Well, anyway, Starabit will definitely win. Moonriff is no match for them. I heard the entire night squad was wiped out after that cave incident in the desert. But if you bet on Moonriff, the payout odds will be very high." Nun Selena stood there with a smirk, thinking to herself, I will be the one who wins that bet. I really need money lately. Elkai seems to be plotting something recently. She recalled a scene of her talking with Lord Elkai. He had asked her if she was preparing for any engagement or anything. Hearing the question, Selena hurriedly waved her hands and answered in surprise, "What? No, I am not preparing for anything like that at all." Lord Elkai nodded. "I see." He looked extremely pensive. Selena realized something and thought, Around this time, Princess Loka should be throwing a fit demanding a political marriage, right? So, could this old man be trying to pair me with the male lead? An imaginary scene appeared. Lord Elkai was holding 2 dolls resembling Selena and Frederick, trying to force them to kiss. Selena shuddered. She raised her hand to stop Lord Elkai and said firmly, "Lord Elkai, I have no intention of getting married. I want to be single so badly that I cried out at birth. I will never marry. Last night, I even dreamed of wearing a wedding veil and woke up in tears. So, if I receive any marriage proposals, I'd rather drink poison and die. Furthermore, I once had my fortune told and heard that my destiny is to eat my own husband." Lord Elkai, hearing her eloquent speech, could only fold his arms and say, I see. What a pity." Selena folded her arms and thought to herself, "See, I knew it. If I let my guard down even a little, they'll find a way to pair me with the male lead. Maybe I should just go abroad. But where will I get the money? Ah, there's the friendly match with the Starabit family." Returning to the present, Selena began opening a betting booth right on the spot. She happily spread her arms and shouted loudly, "Place your bets! Place your bets! If Moonriff wins, your money will increase tenfold. If Starabit wins, it's only 2 or 3 times. A man nearby heard this, folded his arms with a suspicious look and asked, "Why such a difference? Both are dukes." Selena immediately explained, "It's because so many people bet on Starabit. Do you want to bet on Moonriff for a high profit?" The man immediately waved his hand in refusal. No thanks, I'm not stupid. No need to waste my precious money." Hearing that, Selena smiled and thought to herself, "That's right, keep betting on Starabit so my reward increases." Just then, a figure in a cloak stepped forward. A clear voice rang out, 3 million gold. Selena turned around in shock. The mysterious hooded girl declared, "I bet 3 million gold on Moonriff to win." Hearing that, Selena's jaw dropped in astonishment, her eyes wide. She realized immediately and stood frozen, thinking, "That child is Princess Locus?" But before Selena could process it, realizing the mysterious hooded girl was indeed Princess Locus, she became even more confused. She thought, why would someone like the princess come here to bet? Is she that interested in the Moonriff family? Probably not. She probably guessed Moonriff would win thanks to news from her spies in the Duke's house. Oh boy, she's also a huge obstacle for the female lead in the original plot. Looks like she won't be easy to deal with this time either. But regardless, Selena looked joyful and said, "A bet of 3 million gold? Thank you." Suddenly, a man standing nearby said sarcastically, There really are many ways to waste money. 3 million on the underdog? You should give that money to a beggar instead. Hearing that, Princess Locust stepped forward and spoke in a cold voice. Turns out, you only know how to bark, but have no money, huh? Are you telling me to give it to a beggar, or are you talking about yourself? The man, stunned, roared, What? A beggar? Fine, I'll bet 3.5 million gold on Stirabit. Princess Locust just smirked and declared, I bet 4 million gold. I should bet more than a beggar. The man completely lost his cool and screamed, What? Then I'll bet 5 million. Selena, caught in the middle, could only gape, thinking, in the blink of an eye, the stakes have skyrocketed like crazy. Then she immediately immersed herself in a fantasy of wealth. She happily flailed amidst piles of gold coins, thinking, Unbelievable. Princess Locust is truly the best. I wish you 100 years of life. Even if the male lead belongs to Asen, I still wish you a long life. Just then, a man stepped out into the center of the arena, drawing everyone's attention. He held a megaphone and announced, Everyone, thank you for waiting. The match will begin right now. The scene shifted to where the Duke, Starabit, and Duke Frederick were sitting in the stands. Cheers echoed throughout the arena, signaling that the fiery battles were about to take place. The earth-shaking match officially began. Knight Dylan, in his majestic white and purple uniform, strode onto the arena. He tightened his grip on his sword with a determined heart, thinking, This friendly match is a best of 5. It will be a long battle. This is the first match, so I must do well. I absolutely cannot lose for the honor of Lady Asen. The host shouted, and now, stepping out as the first fighter for Moonriff, Knight Dylan, and facing him is Knight Diamond of Starabit. As soon as Diamond saw Dylan, he smirked and spoke sarcastically. Hey Dylan, do you still have that phobia of reptiles? I guess that's why you fled from the Royal Knights and drifted to this Moon Riff Club for losers, huh? Dylan only looked coldly at his opponent and replied in a calm voice, Draw your sword, Diamond. Then he drew his sword and declared loudly, I will show you how much I've changed while at a Moonriff. A moment later, cheers erupted from the stands. Unbelievable! He won! The Starabit Knights knelt on the floor in defeat, while the Moonriff Knights raised their weapons high to celebrate the victory. In the stands, the audience also gasped in shock. No, it's impossible! The scoreboard clearly displayed the result. The host yelled, The final score is 3-0. Moonriff wins, Starabit 0. On the honorary seats, the little dragon Asen was sitting casually eating popcorn. She smiled proudly, thinking, Asen's honor has been preserved. She happily looked up at Frederick, who was smiling, and thought, I look so happy. In stark contrast to that joyful atmosphere was Duke Starabit, who was boiling with rage. He slammed his wineglass onto the table and roared, It's impossible! Duke Moonriff must have cheated in the match. Otherwise, how could we lose? We even had a magic swordsman on our side. Afterward, the host stepped out to announce, Ladies and gentlemen, all matches end here. But immediately the crowd above protested vehemently, shouting, Let the remaining 2 fight. I bet my whole fortune on Duke Starabit. Let those 2 fight more. That's right. Are you planning to ignore the audience? Driven into a corner by the crowd, the host could only bow and wipe beads of sweat, saying, Thank you for your enthusiastic support. Today's friendly match concludes here. But just then, a cold voice rang out, interrupting him. Wait a moment. Princess Locust, in her mysterious hooded cloak, slowly stepped out into the arena. The crowd was stunned as they realized who had just appeared. The host also cried out in panic, That person is Princess Locust, the 3rd princess? Princess Locust smiled meaningfully at the host and said, There are still many people who want to keep watching. By what authority do you end it on your own like that? As soon as the princess finished speaking, the entire stands immediately knelt in unison and shouted, She is absolutely right. Her Royal Highness the Princess is right. The little dragon Asen, sitting in her chair, gaped in amazement at the sight, thinking, Everyone is kneeling? Even my husband. She looked over to see both Frederick and the old Duke, Starabit, who was so noisy earlier, also kneeling down. Asen realized with shock, so that human is the notoriously terrifying princess? But instead of being afraid, Asen looked at Princess Locust with sparkling eyes full of admiration. She thought happily, She is so cool. Asen wants to become fierce like the princess too. Below, Princess Locust continued to speak. We can continue, but actually there is a problem. The power gap between the two knight squads is too large. Even if they fight again, the result will be the same. So, what should we do? Suddenly, Princess Lokaz had an idea and exclaimed, "Aha! There are two divine beasts here, aren't there? To increase the friendship between the two families, why don't we hold a friendly match between the two divine beasts?" Hearing this, Frederick immediately became tense. As for Duke Starabit, he was so angry he was seeing stars. He thought to himself, "Does that crazy princess want to use my divine beast as a monster measuring stick?" Then he spoke up. "Forgive me, princess," but before he could finish his sentence, Frederick cut in, saying, "I refuse." He calmly explained, "Such a sudden match is unreasonable. Furthermore, there are no safety measures here. If divine beasts clash, the consequences will be severe." But Princess Lokaz had anticipated this. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, I brought the Imperial mages to set up a barrier. I also agree that sudden duels shouldn't happen, but not every battle can be foretold." While Frederick was still hesitating to finish his words, a voice suddenly rang out from the Starabit section of the stands. "Just fight." It was a mysterious man with flaming red hair sitting arrogantly right next to Duke Starabit. Then the red-haired guy stood up, brushed his hands off looking extremely conceited, and continued, "It's just one match. Stop arguing and just do it. We just need to defeat whatever that divine beast of Frederick's is, right?" Everyone agrees, don't they? Seeing the red-haired guy making decisions on his own, Duke Starabit panicked and grabbed the man's pants. His face turned pale, and he said tremblingly, "Sit down, Faya. This isn't as simple as you think." The red-haired guy named Faya heard that and only gave a cold snort, saying, "If it's not simple, then make it simple." Then he turned toward Frederick's stands and shouted loudly, "Hey, divine beast of Moonriff! I am the divine beast of Starabit!" He pointed directly at the little dragon Asen, who was sitting in a chair, and roared, "Come out here right now and fight me!" Being called out unexpectedly, Asen jumped in shock and cried out, "Bibi!" The little dragon Asen immediately stood up on the chair. With a very determined look, she thought to herself, "If I don't go out there, Asen's honor will be damaged." Immediately, she stood solemnly with her arms folded and her chest puffed out proudly, striking a cool pose and declaring loudly, "I am the leader of Moonriff, Asen. If you dare to challenge Asen, you'd better be prepared. Come at me." But the distance was too great, making the little dragon look tiny, so nothing could be seen clearly. Faya, unable to hear her, squinted irritably and shouted again, "Hey, divine beast of Moonriff! Are you so scared you don't dare come out? I guess you ran away, huh?" Seeing this, Frederick stood up and picked up the little dragon Asen. He held Asen up high and declared loudly, "Sorry to disappoint you, but my divine beast is right here." Asen cooperated, crying out, "That's right, it's me!" This scene left the crowd below confused and bewildered, while Faya roared in anger, "That tiny thing you can't even see clearly? That thing that looks like a lizard?" The entire stands immediately exploded with whispers. "That is the divine beast of Moonriff? I heard it could breathe fire and swallow rabbits whole, but now it looks like it's about to be eaten by a rabbit instead." Faya scratched his head, grimacing and muttering, "So, unless Duke Moonriff has gone crazy, is that shiny, bald lizard really their divine beast?" Hearing the new nickname, Asen's entire body began to tremble violently. A second later, she struggled like crazy, screaming angrily, "Bald lizard?" Then the little dragon spat out a tiny flame from her mouth to show her extreme indignation and roared, "Come here and fight me! If you're so tough, come at me!" Fia, seeing that scene, could only fold his arms and shake his head. He began his shameless provocation again. Folding his arms, he asked smugly, "Hey, I'm a bit curious." Asen replied crossly, "What?" Faya smirked and pointed directly at the piece of eggshell on Asen's head. He said, "What's wrong with calling a bald head bald, huh, Baldy?" Hearing that, Asen got so angry her fur stood on end. She stomped her feet and pointed to her head, crying out, "But I'm not bald! Look, I still have this eggshell here." Seeing this, Faya smirked triumphantly and said, "That's not even your head. If that falls off, you'll really be bald. Ha ha ha." Hearing this, the little dragon Asen's resentment reached its peak. She told herself, "I can't argue with that. Asen is bald, but no one is allowed to call Asen bald. Fia, seeing Asen sulking, smiled and continued his teasing, saying, "Hey, didn't you know? The stronger a divine beast is, the more its color or fur matches its master. But you," Asen cried out angrily again. "Shut up!" The crowd in the stands looked at Asen. Tiny Asen and the red-haired Faya were standing opposite each other in the arena. They asked in bewilderment, "Is that really the rumored monster? It looks like one flap of the Starabit divine beast's wings would blow it away." The atmosphere was already against her before the match even started. "Are they going to give up like that?" One person countered, "I heard that thing once took down hundreds of knights, but it's obviously just a rumor, right?" Just then, Duke Starabit was sipping his wine, smirking sinisterly as he thought, "Heh, public opinion is starting to turn." In another corner, pink-haired Selena was putting her hand to her mouth and biting her nails, thinking, "What is she doing? The match has already started, but she's just sulking and playing with her head? Whatever." After thinking that, Selena shouted loudly, "Lady Asen, I know a way to help hair grow back." And coincidentally, the president of the Bald People's Association was also nearby. Selena continued, "Where I come from, the less hair you have, the stronger you are. Stay strong, Lady Asen." Asen heard that, looked up, and cried out. That president of the Bald People's Association turned to look. He whispered to Selena, "Miss, please tell me your secret. Miss, please tell me." Faya, seeing that scene, could only click his tongue. Unbelievable. I should have ended this easily. "Hey, come here. Attack!" The host outside was surprised to witness the scene on the field. He shouted, "Ah, unbelievable! The divine beast of Moonriff is charging at its opponent with incredible speed." The little dragon Asen flew as fast as an arrow, and a moment later, Asen slammed directly into Fia. A loud explosion rang out. The host continued, "A direct hit!" The divine beast of Starabit was knocked far away. Faya, after being sent flying by the little dragon, asked in shock and bewilderment, "Huh? Wait a minute. Did I almost lose just because I nearly stepped out of the ring?" The little dragon Asen stood on the arena floor, puffing her chest out smugly, and asked, "How was that? Have you seen my power yet?" Unexpectedly, Faya burst into a terrifying laugh. Then his voice deepened, creating flames around him as he thought, "Just a baldy with no eyebrows dares to humiliate me? I won't go easy on you anymore." After speaking, he clenched his fists. Then he immediately erupted into a flame that covered his entire body. Those around him said in amazement, That is the true form of the divine beast, Fia?" Amidst that brilliant fire, a giant flame phoenix appeared majestically. The little dragon Asen also gaped in shock at the giant creature before her. Fia, currently in the form of a phoenix, looked down at Asen and said, "Hey Baldy, if you beat me, I'll call you Big Sister for the rest of my life, though that's never going to happen." When Frederick witnessed this, he gripped his chair tightly and thought angrily, "This match is too unfair for Asen who can't fly. I should have ensured she wouldn't be provoked." At that moment, the phoenix Fia opened its beak wide. It was creating a giant fireball with a blinding light. Seeing this, Frederick cried out in panic, "Get out of the way, Asen!" Immediately, the fire phoenix launched that fireball straight down at the arena with terrifying speed. Little Asen, seeing the giant fireball rushing down, widened her eyes in terror at her opponent's overwhelming power. Will the little dragon Asen be able to survive and turn the tide to prove that having less hair really does mean being stronger? At this moment, the center of the arena was ablaze and covered in thick smoke. The commentator's voice rang out rapidly in astonishment. He screamed in horror, "Unbelievable! The divine beast of Starabit! It's firing a massive fire breath attack. The entire arena is submerged in a sea of flames. The terrifying fireball is about to swallow Asen's tiny body." She was still standing there without a hint of defense. The commentator continued to scream in panic. Is this the end for the divine beast of the Moonriff House? Frederick had already jumped up from his seat, his face pale and drenched in sweat. He screamed frantically, "Stop it! The match is over!" In another corner, Selena was anxiously clasping her hands in prayer, her face showing clear fear. In total contrast, Duke Starabit calmly took a sip of wine. He smirked triumphantly and thought to himself, "Of course." The fire was still burning fiercely, but Asen's tiny form stood tall amidst the sea of flames without moving an inch. The commentator shouted, Asen hasn't moved at all. Frederick completely lost control. He closed his eyes and screamed in despair. Stop the match immediately. At that life or death moment, Asen's tiny dragon wings suddenly retracted, and then with a swish, a pair of real, powerful dragon wings unfurled. The little dragon slowly hovered in the air, her tiny feet creating ripples of golden magic on the ground. Then, the destructive fireball exploded on the arena floor. Smoke and dust obscured all vision. The host screamed frantically through the megaphone. Wait! Something just shot up from the middle of the smoke. A tiny dark shadow soared into the sky with small wings. The host shouted in shock. It's the divine beast of Moonriff! The little dragon easily evaded the fireball by a hair's breadth. She even let out a challenging beep-bee. Seeing that, the entire stands went silent. A female spectator stammered, That lizard! Frederick had been standing up from his seat this whole time. Both hands gripped the railing as he uttered in shock, She can fly? In the deep blue sky, Asen was leisurely gliding with her wings. She flapped them proudly as if to show off, saying, Asen has been able to fly for a while now. Asen practiced by herself. Didn't Asen tell everyone yet? Below the stands, both Selena and Frederick showed clear signs of irritation. Both replied with equal annoyance, You didn't say anything. Witnessing that spectacular transformation, the Fire Phoenix Fia smirked. The red-haired guy thought to himself, this is starting to get interesting. But immediately after, his expression became terrifying. He roared, But in front of me, that's just a petty trick. Get ready. The heat flared up violently again. The Fire Phoenix gathered an energy ball even more horrific than before. Then he launched the massive fireball straight at the little dragon. Tiny Asen hovered, watching the fireball rush toward her at terrifying speed, but this time Asen was no longer afraid. She puffed out her cheeks and pouted with determination, thinking, Earlier, Asen was so shocked she couldn't do anything, but don't look down on Asen. Having said that, the little dragon braced herself, concentrating all her purple dark magic, and from her mouth she immediately spat out a giant purple fireball to counter the red fireball. The host standing below gaped in astonishment and screamed, Unbelievable! What an amazing sight! 2 streams of energy, 1 gold and 1 purple, are clashing fiercely in mid-air. He continued to comment in excitement. The divine beast of Moonriff is bravely facing its opponent with just a small breath attack. And that wasn't all. The unthinkable happened. That purple breath stream was not dissipated. It began to spin rapidly, the purple energy condensing into a sharp energy drill. Not only was it not pushed back, but it pierced right through the center of the fireball. The host screamed again. That small breath has become as sharp as a drill, piercing straight through the center of the giant breath sphere inside the sea of fire. The image of the red-haired guy, Faya, appeared with an infuriated face. His face was dripping with sweat. Completely unable to believe what was happening, he screamed in silence, Damn it! How could that stupid-looking lizard discover the weakness of this move? At this moment, the purple drill had completely pierced through the fireball. It rushed straight toward the giant phoenix. Faya only had time to let out one final roar. You dare? Followed by an earth-shattering explosion. The purple energy swallowed the fire phoenix in a blinding pillar of light. Immediately after, the giant phoenix form slowly shifted and the red-haired guy, Fia, appeared in human form. His body lost control and fell freely from the blue sky. Boom! Faya fell face first onto the arena floor, knocked unconscious. High above, the little dragon Asen, with her new wings spread wide, glided leisurely like a king ruling the sky. The entire stands fell silent. The host held the megaphone, trembling and stammering. This is... While Selena below also covered her mouth in shock. Only Frederick stood there, smiling with pride and feeling relieved. The red-haired guy, Fia, the Fire Phoenix divine beast, had now returned to human form. He lay sprawled on the arena floor, eyes wide, completely unconscious. In the deep blue sky, the little dragon Asen took a proud victory lap. The host regained his composure after a few seconds of bewilderment and screamed in utter confusion. Unbelievable. Contrary to all predictions, the winner is the divine beast of Moonriff. Being named like that, the little dragon Asen happily glided in the shimmering aura. She joyfully screamed, Bibibia! Then the host declared solemnly, And so the friendly match ends with a victory for the Duchy of Moonriff. The entire arena exploded in endless cheering. Later, in a corner of the stands, Selena was holding the pouch of her winning bet money. She laughed loudly. Ha ha ha! And then leaned back in her chair in delight. Her hands held up 2 heavy bags of gold, her eyes shining with money. She screamed in joy, thinking, did I really win all this money? For real? Oh my god! Beside her, Princess Locas in her mysterious hooded cloak also stood up. Her night guard asked respectfully, Princess, are you planning to leave now? Princess Locust smiled meaningfully. She thought to herself, I've found something interesting. That's enough. Then she ordered the guard, just continue the investigation. The guard immediately bowed in obedience. Yes, I understand. After the match ended, Frederick sought out Duke Starabit, who was standing alone in the stands. He spoke in a cold voice, calling out, Duke Starabit, I apologize for your reckless use of your divine beast that led to the death of knights, and for insulting this family by saying they couldn't destroy monsters without a divine beast. Please apologize. Hearing this, Duke Starabit ignored him and gnashed his teeth. He thought to himself, why should I apologize? But then he glanced at the whispering crowd of spectators below and thought, but with so many people watching this? He had to suppress his anger and force a fake smile. With veins popping on his face, he smiled and said, I apologize, Duke. I underestimated your family's strength. But that very night, at the Starabit mansion, he slumped onto the sofa, clutching his head and pulling his hair, thinking furiously, nonsense! My divine beast lost to that tiny lizard. Not only that, but it was knocked to the ground by the same fire attribute. The only consolation is that I received the diamond mine as a reward for conquering the desert cave. Yes, with money, I can buy back my honor. He immediately sat at his desk to review papers with a sinister smile, thinking, if I sell that mine quickly before Moonrift demands its return. But right then, an ice-cold voice rang out from the shadows right behind him. You still haven't changed